Welcome to GROGTALK, episode 20, Dan. 20 of these shenanigan-filled episodes. How are you today?
I'm doing great. You know, it's not just episode 20, it's episode natural.
Oh, it's natural 20. Okay, that's a good one. We need that. Have you been working on that all day?
That's all I've got, all week.
Oh, okay.
That's all I've got.
That's good. Thanks very much. Anyway, we have our new format. We're just getting better and better all the time because, as you know, we've been put a lot of effort, and thanks to our patrons. And just real quick, I want to thank Max, who is our newest patron. He signed up at the silver tier, so that means he gets a copy of the Fate of Pelennor soundtrack, which is a soundtrack of our podcast. He'll also get the two adventures that we're building for GrogCon this October. And he gets to participate in one of our new segments, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But I wanted to introduce our guest. Again, we're part of the DM Session series. We have a very great guest that Dan has known for a while. So Dan, I'm going to let you introduce him.
Yeah, so it's our pleasure to have Carlos Lising on the show today. So Carlos is the owner and lead designer of casl Entertainment. He publishes adventures that are compatible with Osric, which many of you may know is a retro clone of 1E. He's a frequent dungeon master at conventions such as GaryCon and GameholeCon. And I first met Carlos at a GaryCon, not this last one, but the one before. And, you know, it sort of was like picking classes when you don't know any of the professors and you just pick I like this course. It was 1E. I liked the class, and the time was good. And so I'll take this class. And I was thrilled to have signed up for Carlos's game. He's an incredible DM. He influenced the way I DM. He really describes. So you know my view. This is the longest introduction, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You've been working on this. It's good.
You know how I feel about combat. I think it's boring. I really don't like it. I want to get to role playing. But with Carlos's game, I found myself loving combat. And if you can make me love combat, then you've done something. So Carlos, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here, Dan. And you know, actually for me, I'm kind of like you a little bit in that I'm really not huge into combat as far as the game goes. However, once I started to realize that the combat could actually be an extension of the role play itself, by getting into deep description of it and engaging your players in that fashion, I started to become a much bigger fan of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, James, you noticed it when I came back. I started mimicking what Carlos said. You know, so being very, descriptive of, I always wanted to know, well, what weapon are you using to describe the death blow and, describe the different attacks and the damage that's being done. Even though I guess Gary Gygax says that hit point loss to players is not really necessarily wounds. It's a wearing down. But who cares?
Correct.
But it's fun to describe. So I still, I think for the sake of
it is, but that's one of those situations. For example, let's say that your character has 60 hit points and a fusillade of arrows is being launched at you. You may describe the player characters as being behind their shield and they're weathering the storm of it, and they just took 6 hit points of damage. That's an expression of the fact that they lost some luck there. They lost, they've been worn down endurance-wise, things like that. So yeah, your take on it is absolutely correct as far as I'm concerned. But again, that's another chance right there to really engage the players and ratchet up the tension that we all love.
Yeah. So Carlos, can you remember, or do you remember how you got in the hobby and what you're doing now? Kind of give us your background.
Of course, yeah. I started the game in 1978. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and I had no idea of this cultural revolution that was going down right up the road from my house. But I had a friend of mine, my best friend at the time. I went over to his house. It was Christmas break, and his mom and dad had bought him the Holmes Basic set for his birthday. I looked at it, and I saw the cover, and I was like, wow, we've got to give this a try. And so we played it, and I played a magic user, and I just had read Lord of the Rings for the first time. And I thought to myself, man, I'm going to be a magic user. I'm going to be like Gandalf. This will be awesome. And I didn't fathom the fact that I only had one spell per day. So room 2, when I saw that carrion crawler, I was toast. But I did find the game hooked me forever. I just the whole concept of the whole thing taking place in your mind, the theater of the mind, the idea that there was really no limits. This wasn't a box of a game. This was this was unlimited. You could take it anywhere you wanted to, and right away I saw the potential for it, even as a young man, and I knew it was something that would be a big part of my life for the rest of my life. Um, Ever since then, you asked me what I'm doing right now. I gamed ever since then. A couple years ago, I was inspired when I went to GaryCon. I wanted to DM a couple games, and I thought to myself, I'm one of those kind of people that I'm always reaching for the next thing. So I thought to myself, I'm going to run a game. I'm going to run my favorite villain in Greyhawk all time is Marquesa.
Yeah, he was telling me that.
From Secret of Slaver Stockade.
Yep.
And I decided that I would make it about Marquesa. So I'm writing it, and I was like, you know what? These notes just aren't doing it for me. So I'm reaching for the next thing. Why don't I just break it down like a module? Okay, cool. The next thing I know, I've got a cover, I've got maps. And I looked at my wife. I was like, actually, I kind of like this. And she's like, why don't you do it full on? And I thought to myself, the whole time as a kid, I wanted to be a writer growing up always. But I just wanted to do like comic books or something because I thought that was something I could do. When I looked at people like Gygax and Jim Ward and people like that, these are my idols. There was no way I could ever do what they were doing. But then older, I was like, you know what? I've been training for this my whole life, essentially. Let's do this. So I ended up, the next time I came to GaryCon, I had 3 full-on modules. Well, backtracking a little bit, that one GaryCon, I came with 3 published modules. I gave one to my most outstanding player of the game that game. I kept one for myself, and the other one, somebody bought on the spot. They wanted it, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that somebody wanted to buy this. All right, cool. And then I had somebody message me from out of the ether, a good friend of mine now. You may know him through One E-Circles. His name's Andy Markham. He's a great guy out of New York. And he was like, hey, I want everything you've ever done. And I was like, why is that? He goes, because I heard you're good, and I want to support Greyhawk.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, that's like power word stun to me right away. I was like blown away. Okay, great. So now here we are. I've got 13 published modules. I'm currently in the works on 6 more. I've got a successful Patreon going on. Things are going really well for us. We're growing all the time, expanding. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. This year I'm going to be doing GaryCon. I'm doing Gen Con, and I'm also doing GameholeCon.
Okay.
All of them have published modules ready to go for them.
Oh, that's awesome. Make sure, after give me your information, so I'll put it in the show notes and in the podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be great because we love to support old school gaming, and the fact that you mentioned Marquesa from A2, and she definitely punched above her weight class, because she was like a 5th level magic user or something, like fighter magic or something like that. But she was such a badass. I mean, she was manipulating.
The greatest thing about Marquesa is she is Greyhawk's Dr. Mangala.
Yeah, yeah.
There are very few characters that are truly as unrepentantly just twisted, straight up evil as Marquesa. I know you could go on about Igwaliv or Ayuz or people like that, but you know what? They're at a different level. Marquesa to the common folk is this horrific name that nobody even whispers within the whole Wild Coast area.
Yeah.
She's the last of the slavers you want to see.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, the rest of them, they're kind of shadows, but this one, to your point,
she's the last one.
And that whole fort of sorrow and misery and the new creatures that came out of it because of the inhumanity that's there. So that's a great taking that character and really fleshing it out, because
and every one of my Marquesa modules, there have been different and new abominations that she's created. In fact, the most recent one that I did was Marquesa, Thy Name is Evil. That is actually one of her R&D laboratories.
Okay.
Is where the players are researching, and some of the stuff they get to see in there I'm writing this and I'm like, boy, is this too over the top? Well, I got to remember who I'm writing for. So no, I guess not.
Very good. Are they? So you're using them at the conventions. Are they tournament modules, or are they just meant to be used at a convention?
If you've ever read modules like Ghost Tower of Inverness or Hidden Shrine of Tama-chan, you've got Tomoa-chan, excuse me. You'll notice that there is a way to play them for convention play and for campaign play. I try and do the same thing in my modules,
Okay.
where I explain that how they're best used within a tournament uh, context and also with a convention context. For example, in tournament games, when you're running a tournament game, there's no such thing as a wandering monster table. And the reason being is because there could be 3 or 4 different groups running it. And if one of them is unlucky enough to roll a 12 on that 12-sided dice and they get, I don't know, a roper in there that takes out half the party, well, it kind of skews the odds of the whole thing. So you want to, in the tournament context of it, you want to be a little bit more, uh, you want to give a more even experience. So, but that being said, if you were to look at my modules, you'd read, if this is being played in a context of a campaign, this is what you've got.
So before we keep going, let's make sure we go through our new.
Haha, there she
There it
is.
is. That's
There
right.
and what
So she's Dan. What are you showing?
I am showing the module Marquesa, Thy Name is Evil at A7 by Carlos. It's I went through this one at the last GaryCon.
Oh, cool.
And I was reading through it, and we were talking about this before we came on air. Carlos, the writing is fantastic. It's a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to read. So, what I'm looking for when I read a module is I want it to be clear, be able to understand what's in the room, not have a lot of gaps, and it has all that. What you don't expect is it to be really well written in a creative way, and this is. And I was joking too. Make sure you have a dictionary, because Carlos is going to throw some words out there that you might have to look up. So,
Yeah,
but no, it was a pleasure.
I am one of the sons that Gary Gygax never knew he had, just like you two are. And I mean, he literally spawned thousands of children that he never knew he had in our generation. And I was inspired. I would read words like, I remember in WG6, which is Isle of the Ape, Tensor has this rambling speech for about a page and a half of preamble of that module, and he drops Gigaw in it. And I was like, wow, I thought I'd seen them all from Gary. And every module had something in it that I would run for the dictionary in. And I think that helped me as a young man. I mean, it helped me, found a love of words and language. And a lot of my life has been shaped by that.
Well, and
so
I
try and pay homage to that a little bit in what I write.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense, because I know for me personally, I wasn't much of a reader except for the Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Handbook, those type of the modules that I was would read them multiple times. So I agree with you there. So let's so Dan, after last week when we had Vic on, we've come up with a number of new new segments that we want to introduce ahead of time and get some input. We set up a Patreon. One of our listeners said, hey, we've got, do you have a Patreon? We said, fine, we do it, and we did it, and we have different tiers.
Fine, we'll take your money.
That's right. Well, again, we do
if
this.
We must.
We do this because it's fun. We do it because it's a lot of fun. We enjoy speaking to folks like Carlos who are passionate about this, who are working to keep the hobby to the form that we're very comfortable with. So just real quick, we've got a bunch of tiers. We obviously have the copper, silver, electrum, gold, platinum, and so our first dear listener did a silver, which means, like I said, he gets the song and he gets 2 segments. So we have a couple of segments planned for today. We're gonna do random encounters where we're going to Dan is gonna roll up a monster, and then we're gonna talk about it, because in a couple of sessions ago we learned about the homunculus and how mending needs to be used for it. I'm like, I never read that. That's amazing. So hopefully Carlos, with his deep insight, hopefully we won't get like giant rat or something, but we'll get something very interesting. We'll do that.
When you design modules, you end up coming through those books at a level that you never even did as a player or a DM. And I constantly find myself reading something going, how did I miss that all this time?
Yeah.
So I can't wait for this segment. It'll be great. It'll be just as good for me as it is for you.
And then we're also going to have an in memoriam segment where we hope Jeannie is going to call in, right? Is she still scheduled to call in?
She is scheduled to call in
Okay.
at 9:45 our time.
Okay, great. So I've got to
yes,
make sure my phone
So
is
this
on.
is a segment where people can send in their characters and who have passed, and we'll do a in memoriam segment for them.
So and you know, for our patrons who do that, they can either call in or just send us the information. And we've set up a page on our site where we will post these dearly departed, and they can tell us how unfortunately they died, and also, you know, remind us of how, you know, that's what makes first edition what it is that character death is expected. And smart play is rewarded, but sometimes bad things happen. But that's what makes it epic when you do survive that thing. So
well, and what I think is interesting is, Carlos, I think your story about how you first got into D&D, where you had your magic user who dies, killed by the carrion crawler, I think you said, well, like room 3 or something like that.
Right.
And it's very typical that your character dies very quickly, and you say, I want more. So
right.
That's 1E, right? I mean, I know
especially for me. Before we got on, I think I mentioned to you guys I was a competitive hockey player as a young man. I played collegiately, in fact, and I'm a competitive guy. So when my character got killed, I was like, no way. I need another crack at this.
Yeah.
So,
and my understanding is, even though you grew up in Chicago, you're a big Bruins fan. Is that right?
No, I'm absolutely not a big Bruins
I don't know where
fan.
I got that info
As a matter of fact, this is my time to come clean on this. Mike Bridges, if you're out there, Jason King, if you guys are out there, I'm sorry. I was rooting for a natural disaster to destroy both teams and wipe them both off the map. Those are like 2 out of the 3 of my most loathed franchises in the NHL.
Wow.
Number 1 being Detroit.
Okay.
So we have things in common.
Yeah.
Well, as a Lightning fan who was supposed to win it all, then they exit out early, and then I became. Then I was I came from New York, and I was an Islander fan. Everyone was a Ranger fan there, so I was done pretty early, unfortunately. You know.
Yeah.
We were done.
You could talk about something you couldn't see coming.
So I gave up on that. The last month, I didn't even know hockey was keep going on, so that was great.
I wish I had known it was going on.
That's right.
As a Bruins fan. So, all right, was it time for our random encounters?
Yes, it's time for our random encounters. Let's see if this shenanigans is going to work.
All right. I can't wait for this.
Well, maybe it's not going to work. Keep going.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to roll a random encounter here. Since Carlos is our guest, we're going to be using the Monster Manual 2 random encounter. Because
I'm a big fan.
Right.
Nice.
So Carlos is a big fan. Also the Fiend Folio, which I'm sure we can get around to talking about. So we're going to use that. And I know, Carlos, I know you like using these because you love players like me. Because I don't know the Monster Manual 2. I don't know
I sure
Fiend,
do.
right? And so when I come across this monster, I have absolutely no idea what it is.
Well, the thing is, you have to remember, most of these books were written almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay? There's been a lot of time for you guys, for players like us that play in 1E, to master all the materials. And yet there is a huge subculture, there's a huge cross-section of our hobby that is like you, Dan, and they're all about your core 3. So whenever I bust out the Fiend Folio on players, it takes them totally off guard. They don't know quite, you've got players out there that can recite all the weaknesses of a devil and a demon and all the differences right off the top of their heads.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody knows. So, example, people will know if they need a magical weapon to hit, they'll be racing for a magical weapon.
But if I tell you that you're going to fight a magnesium spirit, what's the first thing you think of?
Milk?
Exactly.
Milk?
Fiend Folio right there.
Milk of magnesia?
Milk of magnesium?
Yeah.
I know. See,
It's actually a really deadly monster from Fiend Folio.
Yeah.
See, I was very disappointed. I ran an adventure from White Dwarf called the Halls of Tizenthane, and the carbuncle was introduced in the Halls of Tizenthane. And the characters open up the door, and I describe it, and I believe, James, you're like, we need to shut that door.
Right.
You knew this was bad news.
Yeah, shut it down.
Which is unfortunate.
Unless you cast Charm Monster and convince it to give up its gem and go away.
Oh.
Right. Which would be wonderful, but I think we were second level.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
low level.
Yeah,
That's just about the only thing you can do according to the Fiend Folio for a carbuncle.
What a
so
shame. A lot of fun.
I knew it was sad
missed.
badness, and so which is great.
Oh,
You put that, by the way, right in my wheelhouse. I just studied the carbuncle about maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
carbuncle
So
studies.
you put that right in my wheelhouse, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
So what we have is we're going to have an outdoor random encounter. It's going to be outdoor, is what
Okay.
I've rolled. And hang on, I've got like 4 different regions. You know, there's so many charts.
You know,
but this
Carlos
is-
could roll for us, and this way you could focus on the chart rolling. Carlos, what does he need to roll?
Okay, roll a D4 to define the region. So I randomly rolled, and we're in the outdoor.
D4 is a 1.
1.
Okay, we are in a cold wilderness area.
Okay.
So now
Perfect.
I need a die 6. So this is classic 1E, isn't it?
That's right.
2 hours later.
That's a 1 again.
Oh, we are in the mountains in a cold wilderness area. We now need a.
Are you sure you're not talking about the module I wrote?
No. Yeah.
So we now I'm a little confused because it goes from 2 to 20. Why is it
So
not
it's
1
a
to 20?
it's a D8 and a D12.
2D10.
Well, I think on this one they wanted to skew it, but yeah, you.
Oh, 2D10, so that way the 10 and 11s
2D
are more common.
Right.
Very
Right.
See,
Yeah.
this is how little I know.
Yeah, I see
the
that.
Total is a 15 on
15.
that.
There you go.
Okay, the first monster in the random encounter segment is a hill giant.
A hill giant.
Oh,
That's-
nice.
That's classic.
Have you?
Yeah, it's very classic.
Have you? Yeah, so after all that talk about the feed folio and the monster manual,
No, we can. This is in my wheelhouse too, because as an old school Greyhawk guy, the most famous hill giant in history, Nosra,
Yeah, no sir.
the chieftain from G1.
this is meant to be. So the hill. Have you ever put cards? Do you have a hill giant in any of your published adventures?
I do not in any of my published adventures. However, one of Marquesa's lieutenants has a belt of hill giant strength. Does that count?
Close enough.
Close enough.
Can we do
Yeah.
some quick trivia? I want to see how well you guys know the hill giant.
Well,
Okay.
I would, we were just running because when I started up DMing again, after Dan abandoned his group and I had to take it over, I'm sure he told you about that. And we went from 4 players, 3.5 players to 11 now. So actually, Dan switched to another group. Ed stopped playing and I took over. I decided, I'm sure like a lot of people, we've read the modules. We may have not played them when we were younger because life happened. So I'm like, you know what? I want to run these old school modules. So we're going, we did some of the Slaver series. I tended to do all of them, but those players, being that they got captured in A1. And I'm like, well,
Oh boy.
we'll send them to go to A3. And then anyway, it kind of all fell apart. So we went to the G series. And so we played the Hill Giants and Norsera and the Queen and the Cave Bears. He's got the Throat Slasher with the name of his pet bear, and the hall where they've got this feast hall that they had in there. So what do you want to know? I think they're 8+3 hit dice.
I'll ask the questions. Buddy.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. He's going to ask the questions.
This is interesting.
I apologize, Carlos. We shut up and
Oh,
he
that's
talks.
okay.
Yeah, he's in charge now.
This
Go
is
ahead.
my segment.
This is your segment. Sorry.
So this is interesting to me. Do you know what their frequency is?
They're rare, actually. Are they not?
I would say, not what's. I would say
Uncommon is
yeah,
below that.
uncommon.
Okay, you ready for this? Common.
Common. Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
I wouldn't have expected that.
So basically, they're hill giants all over the place.
Yeah.
So they're like orcs, apparently. They're everywhere.
Oof.
All right, what's the alignment?
That one's easy.
I would not have gotten any of these. I mean, this is why I'm asking the questions.
It's
because I'm
chaotic
getting
evil.
none of these.
Chaotic evil.
That is chaotic evil. And what I like too is, so they have low intelligence, and I was at a Gary Con game where there was a hill giant, and the DM did a really good job of playing the monster with a low intelligence. Talk very slow, and so I really like to pay attention to the intelligence of the monsters and reflect that, right?
If you want a good example of playing against type as well, there is a hill giant nemesis in WG4, which is Forgotten Temple of Thurisdan. And he is in charge of the temple, and he actually coordinates the temple defenses in a pretty good fashion. He's actually pretty smart for a hill giant.
So how do you play? I mean, going back into your style, because again, the first thing I heard about you, Carlos, from Dan was again how he really appreciated your DMing style and really had him wanting to play, not only wanting to play but also DM. So let's start with some of the approaches that you take, and we'll start with running NPCs. You know, you have the hill giant
Okay.
with low intelligence. So what's your philosophy of that? What do you think you do that maybe our listeners or people watching the show could take away from that?
Well, the first thing you have to remember is, for me anyway, when I'm running a character, a villain like a hill giant, you have to first of all create context around that character. Number one, is he in charge of something? Like in, for example, Thrisden, is he appropriate for a low level threat, which means he's the big bad guy, or is it a higher level game in which they're more common? In the first case, where it's the single bad guy, it's almost better to play him against type in a sense, because that way, you're dealing with kind of a layered, a tiered kind of thing. Okay. One other thing I like to remember though is also player characters. There, if you look in the Dungeon Master's Guide, languages, there's different language for every one of the giants. All right. So his ability to communicate with them may not be good because he's a low intelligence, even if you play him against type. Um, so there's a lot of things that go into it as far as role playing that character goes. But as far as dealing with threats, remember when you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes brute force in all respects. If he's got shaman under his control, they are going to be using offensive spells. They're not going to be buffing. They're going to be everything is going to be direct.
Okay.
You know, and I'll say, so speaking of the feed folio and Monster Manual 2, one of the things I do like is I do like more giants. So I did like, right, so wasn't it the feed folio has
Yep.
like a giant troll, right, two-headed troll,
Yep.
and
Spectral troll. Mm-hmm.
and is there a
Fog giant, mountain giant.
yes. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually I like more giants for some reason. So
Well, don't forget DMG had Fomarian giants as that's become a staple of the
what
game.
is that?
So
I'm not familiar with that.
take a look. They're the ones that look like they're made out of candle wax that's been melted.
Oh, okay. It's in the DMG, you say?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I
Oh,
meant in Monster Manual 2. They
Monster
were
too.
originally released in S4, Lost Caverns of Sokanth.
Okay, okay.
So, and as far as you know, because you started writing modules pretty recently, the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
you played the whole time. Dan and I took a pretty long sabbatical.
Right.
So, did you continue playing just first edition, or did you go through the editions, or what's your experience with that?
What I did was I looked at I have everything from third edition, and I looked at it kind of almost in a clinical sense. Um, as a writer, one of the things you learn to do is you do a lot of style analysis. You look at writers that you admire, you take apart their style and figure out what they do well, what they do poorly. So I looked at the 3E stuff, and I wanted to take it apart and kind of figure out how it worked and see what kind of things I thought it did well and what it did poorly. And also, when you're trying to find a game, being conversant in the newest edition it's very important. So before I was writing modules, I'm looking to play, I'm looking to DM, and if the kids want to play 3E, all right, we'll play some 3E.
Okay. Did you play second edition, or did you stay in first edition the whole time?
I was very against second edition actually. When second edition came out, I was kind of a diehard up against first. I was like, this is not at all, and I didn't even. You got to remember, we didn't have an internet or anything like that, so I wasn't really aware truly that Gary had been ousted from TSR,
Yeah.
but I did notice a huge sea change in the books, and I didn't like it. I didn't like Forgotten Realms at all. I didn't like the way that things were trending. So I kind of stayed towards first edition, yeah.
Did you play, we kind of sometimes took side things off to Paranoia or Top Secret or Star Frontiers, or did you pretty much focus on D&D, or did you try?
No, not at all, actually, not at all. When I was in the military, our game of choice actually was Marvel Superheroes
Okay.
from TSR.
Yeah.
We loved that, and I played a lot of top secret. In fact, I had a top secret module that I wrote,
Okay.
which is you can get through Castle Entertainment, and I ran that at last year's GaryCon as one of my modules. Very, very well received. First edition top secret, though.
Yeah, we have a player who plays it, and we're trying to convince him. He was an administrator back in the day. Nick,
Yeah.
we need to get him to because top secret was, huh?
He's I think he's agreed.
Yeah, that's awesome because
That's the other day.
all those, when I was growing up, we didn't have the whole universe of games. We didn't. I had Pendragon, had some. I knew of RuneQuest. We played a little MERP, but it really was D&D, and then some Paranoia because instead of killing ourselves in the actual modules and frustrating the DM because one guy decides he's going to fireball the party because he's angry.
Right.
We said, let's just play Paranoia. That's perfect for that and be silly. But we didn't have the wide swath of games that were out there. We just, like you said, we're very cloistered in our understanding because there wasn't an internet. Whatever the game store had, that's what we had as far as our universe.
Sure.
So I appreciate that.
I have a huge background with comic books, actually.
Okay.
And so as a result, I sought out Marvel when I heard it was out. I'd see it in the back of a comic book. I saw TSR. That's all I needed to know. So that was a big one for me. But Top Secret those are probably the 3 games I've played most. I've dabbled a little bit with Star Frontiers here and there as well. But D&D has always been my first love as far as role-playing games go.
Okay, excellent.
Carlos, can I ask you about your first adventure? You talked about the Holmes Basic set, right? And your magic user dies immediately, the Carry Crawler.
Right.
And I know that you said on other podcasts that you recall it being, the adventure that came with the box. So do you remember? Was that either maybe B1? Do you remember, or was it the Tower of Xenopus, which was the sample module?
It was the Tower of Xenopus.
Oh, that's fantastic! I recently ran. The reason I asked you, I was hoping that'd be the answer. Is I recently ran the Tower of Xenopus for my party, and I think it's a great little adventure. And one of the things I like about it is it's short.
I wouldn't know. I didn't get past the second room.
Oh, it was very short for you. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I like about looking through the Marquesa adventure. Thy Name is Evil adventure. Is that since you are running these at conventions, they can be completed, it seems to me, in an evening, which I think for a lot of us now, we're looking for that because, it's not like when we were in junior high where we could meet every day after school. We meet once every 2 weeks for several hours, and it's hard to have an adventure that has over 100 rooms.
Right. I try my best to make things a little bit more self-contained than that. Like you said, what I've discovered is the 1E crowd, we're a very DIY crowd. We like to create our own things. We like to my modules probably wouldn't do as well as they did had it not been for the fact that I've tied them to the world of Greyhawk, and there's a huge nostalgia factor for that because we're so DIY. So what I've done is I try to make them so that you can put them wherever you want to in your campaign world. Because sometimes you just don't have time as a DM. Sometimes or for one or other reason, maybe you just like some ideas and you want to steal them. That's fine with me. I mean, that's sort of what I'm aiming for.
Excellent. Now, I haven't looked at this before A7, but it looks legit. So, as far as the artwork you put on and the information. So this is.
Thank you very much.
So
I'd like to give a shout out to the cover artist for that.
Okay.
The cover artist's name is Daniel Govar. He's awesome. He's a good friend of mine, and he's great to work with. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Mike Lowe, who is the one who designed the look for Marquesa. If you look at the republished Wizards of the Coast Against the Slave Lords, he's the one that did the artwork that informed the design for Marquesa visually.
Wonderful. So this, so again, like you said, we have a bunch of folks that are DIY people, and I was inspired to talk to Dan about starting a podcast because I was listening to other people's podcasts. And so, what advice would you give? What's the process of creating a published module then versus doing something for your local group where you've got a couple of weeks to prepare here? You're publishing it. What are the high-level steps, and what are the things you would say now looking back you would try to avoid going forward?
Well, one of the first things I try and do is that Jim Ward gives great advice for anyone who's trying to create a module or an adventure. And he says you always want to start with your wandering monster table. Because the wandering monster table kind of informs what is going on as far as what's moving around, all your moving parts inside of there. It gives you a good idea of what is inside the dungeon. It's great advice, but I don't necessarily always take it. I think that it's important to do that, but I think equally as important is I like the environment first. I go about doing the map, actually, before I do anything. I'll do a map design, and then I'll decide what my wandering monster table is. And then I come up with a theme. I have an idea of what I want to accomplish with the module. I mean, it's not unlike writing a novel in a sense, and what you want to do is you want to have an outline of this is what is going on in here. The only difference is when you're dealing with a novel, it's static. When you're dealing with a dungeon environment, you want your players through role-playing, through pure luck, through decisions they make, you want that to be what is the hinge on the dungeon. So you want to give it a lot of paths, a lot of forks at which you could go in different directions. So for me, it's map first. Nebulous concept, map, wandering monster table, hard concept, and then I like to do the pre-generated characters, because it's important to be able to scale what's inside of the dungeon against what's going to be operating inside the dungeon environment. If you create this great module, you say, hey, I've got this great idea for this haunted tower, and it's going to be for characters 4th through 7th level, and the next thing you know, you've got Umber Hulks and Ropers running around in there. You've already kind of failed at your goal. So having the pre-generated characters there, what they're capable of, because, for example, let's say I give a pre-generated character, I don't know, oil of etherealness, mm-hmm. and I have all kinds of these walls in there that separate the character, the big bad guy, from the front of the module. Well, that's not really going to work, is it? Because all they have to do is imbibe that and go right through, and then they're at encounter 40. So much for that. So you want to have an idea of what their capabilities are, engage those against what you're going to do.
Carlos, what kind of things do you get out of the play test? So I know you play test your modules at conventions like GaryCon. What kind of things have you discovered that needed changing when you play tested them?
A lot of times players will surprise you with innovativeness. Like, for example, I just mentioned the oil of etherealness angle. Let's say you're in a wintertime adventure, and you mistakenly give a character a flame tongue or something like that, and they use it in a way that you don't expect them to use it. All of a sudden, you have to recalibrate that encounter, and I'm not necessarily saying that you change it either. Sometimes you salute the player's ingenuity and you say, hey, guess what? If you manage to think of that in the game, hats off to you.
Right.
But no, what you want to do is you want to make the easy, obvious out that you forgot about. You want to do that. And you also tighten up little things like, as I go down through gameplay, I'm studying armor classes, and maybe I made a miscalculation, or maybe I've made a spelling error or something like that. I'll notice that then too.
Yeah, and the players will be sure to point that out. It's like students who, when you mark an answer incorrect, they'll be sure, and it was right. They'll be sure to let you know.
They still failed the test. That's the only question.
Your character's still dead, but yeah, that is true. You shouldn't have been an AC 10. You should have been an AC 2. That's my bad.
But you're still dead because you're a terrible player.
But you're still dead. So
right.
But,
also I like to the main thing is I like to see all the players' faces at the end of the game. I'm very careful. I'll pause like I'm about ready to say something at the end of the game, and I'll look across everybody's face. Right then and there, I know what they thought of the module.
Well, I remember at the GaryCon game I went through with you this last time, you had scheduled it to 1 a.m. And we finished it early. We finished it about midnight. And I think we were 11:30 or something like that. And I think all of us at the table were disappointed. We wanted to go to 1. We were happy to go to 1 a.m. And that was a test.
And I was more than happy to do it as well. Actually, I was ready to go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, every story has its beginning, middle, and end, and you kind of have to want to be true to the script to some degree. I would have hated to have ruined a great session by overstaying my welcome.
No, yeah, no, it ended great. You should just end it. You know, you should bring adventure cards with you. Your adventure cards we'll talk about, right? You just pull out an adventure card. Right?
Yeah. So what is an adventure?
Actually, my wife and I were discussing the fact that since I do multiple modules, for example, I'm going to be doing 3 at Game Hole. I'll be doing 4 at GaryCon. All right. That's 7 modules to write.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I have a reputation for working pretty quickly, but that's a lot of work. That's a lot of writing to do, a lot of prep, a lot of publishing, a lot of expense. My wife and I were discussing actually me running adventure cards rather than full-fledged modules. And I thought about it for a little while, and I was like, I don't know that I can go back now. I've kind of cultivated a little bit of a reputation for myself about what you can expect from one of my modules. I've got people showing up now to my games, and hey, I heard that. Well, I got to bring the goods now, don't I?
Yeah. So what is it? I mean, you sent us one, so thank you very much. And for our listeners and subscribers, we're going to give that away. We're going to figure out probably next week how to give that away. But Carlos was gracious enough to send an adventure card. So what differentiates an adventure? What is it, and what differentiates it from a module, and how do you use it?
Well, remember how we talked about second edition and how I really didn't jump over because I didn't like it? Well, that's not entirely true because there are a few things that I did quite like about it. Like, for example, specialty priests made a whole lot of sense to me. The way that they decided to do specialty mages, I liked that a lot. But one of the big things that I did like is you'll notice in this box set right here, this is Greyhawk Adventures From the Ashes right over here. And in the back of From the Ashes, we'll do a little unboxing for your people here. You'll notice these cardboard cards in here. And what they are they're called adventure cards.
Okay.
Carl Sargent came up with the idea. And what they are they're one-shot modules. Here's an example of one of them right here. It's got a very short, and if you look at it, you'll even notice a very similar format to mine.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a 2-page thing at best, and it's a one-night, like maybe 2 or 3 encounter adventure that you can drop in anywhere you want to. And I was hearing the voice of my customers and my fans and people like that, and I was like, you know what? This is something that they want. They want short things. You even said it yourself about, how much value that brings. So I decided that for my Patreon, one of the things I was going to offer, because people really like my adventures, but obviously I can't publish a module a week or a module a month.
Right.
Is even though I do one every 2 months, I do an adventure card every month, and they're either with a theme or they're with, my patrons tell me what they're interested in. The one that you're holding right now is an exclusive one for you guys that I wrote. You'll notice the kids' names in the adventure card. Might seem familiar to you both.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. There's no spoilers, but yeah. So it's that it's that niche of the one-page adventure, one shot, but with your flair on it, with your flavor on it.
Right,
so that's awesome.
And also the truth is, I mentioned how much I admired Gary for being concise. I'm terribly not concise at all. Okay, every single adventure card I think I've ever written is 5 pages or more.
Yeah.
Because I start thinking to myself, if an idea is cool, it's worth pursuing. So I'm like, man, I want to flesh it out just a little bit more. The next thing I know, I look down at my map. I'm like, there's 7 encounters here.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to make them all crunch, all statistics. So I decided that, hey, well, I guess this is going to be 7 pages.
Well, and part of that too is, they have the Book of Layers that came out, and then they came out later. It's that idea of
Treasures of Greyhawk.
Yep. It's the idea of you're DMing, you roll the random encounter. There's a cave, or the troll. Why is there a troll in the middle of the forest? Oh, he's in a cave. And then now, like, what does that mean? Having these things where you can segue where the journey means something, because I know in later editions, some of that journey element from going from town to dungeon or from dungeon to dungeon is kind of hand waved, whereas we're more of the, no, you've got to traverse over there to pick that up. These are great opportunities.
Absolutely. And in fact, that is one of the main gripes I have about later editions. First of all, let me go off, and I say this just about at every interview I've ever done, and it's true. And I say that because it's true. I actually like every edition that Dungeons and Dragons ever released, because to me, they're like tools in a toolkit. Each one of them does something well, and they all fit a certain experience.
Right.
If you need a saw, you don't pick your hammer out, okay? If you want an old school, deadly as hell game, you're not going to pull out third edition. You're going to go first. But by the same time, if you want, something where it's statistic driven, skill driven, maybe you do pull out 3. So you have to. That's one of my big gripes is, but the other one is that level dependent encounters and treasure bug the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. If you remember, for example, the very first dungeon that I ran in, I was a first level character that ran into a 4-hit dice carry-on crawler, okay? That would never happen in a million years in a third edition game. Right. Never. It couldn't happen. It's literally against the rules of that game for it to happen. But yet that was the whole hook that got me loving this hobby. So if I was born 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, and I was into third edition with my first experience, maybe it wouldn't have worked.
Right, you would have felt there was some confinement or some safe bumper thing, and like we talked about.
Exactly. Well, no, I love the fact that you had to be smart, or else you had to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Right. You see something that you bite off more than you can chew, you run. I don't know parties that flee in third edition.
Now let me ask you this. So back in the day, when you didn't know all of the monsters in the monster manual, and you encounter something, so would it be difficult to know when to run? And some of this may have been the excitement of it, but
that was the thrill of
right
it.
Now
that was a huge part of it.
Now some would be obvious. I think if you run into a hill giant, you could probably sense this thing is going to be pretty powerful.
Yeah.
But when you see some other things that are smaller, you may not realize it, and I guess it is what it is. That's why you oftentimes had a high mortality rate in 1E.
Right.
I wanted to go back for a second to this issue of pre-generated characters and magic items, because I've struggled with this. So, Carlos, you talked about how you've got to be very careful when preparing pre-generated characters for, say, a tournament or for a game at a con, to make sure that those magic items don't unbalance the adventure, make it too easy. That's what I found the most challenging, because I do one-offs now, which are very similar to convention games. So it's a one-off. I want to make sure that people enjoy it for the 4, 5, 6 hours they play. I don't want it to end in 30 minutes because they've driven perhaps to come to the game. But what I think is interesting is how it's different with a campaign. If somebody has a magic item that would have allowed them to defeat the big bad very quickly, that's fun, right? Because that party's earned that magic item, so it's no big deal that we're gonna have another game, the campaign will continue, and so I guess it's just more of a comment, which I think is that this approach to using magic items can be very different between a campaign where it's fantastic, you've got this rope of climbing that wins the day and ends the adventure in 2 hours, whereas if you're at a convention and that happens, people aren't happy because they're spending 4 hours in the bazaar.
Yeah, you have to be more careful in the convention environment for sure. But there's something else at play too. You ever read a Superman comic book?
It's been a while.
Been a while.
Have you ever noticed how much kryptonite there is on Earth?
Yes. It's like
everybody whips out kryptonite all the time.
Right.
Imagine you're a player in a Supers game in that situation.
Yeah.
What's the point of having superpowers?
Right.
You want to give the player characters a chance to use the stuff that they've fought so hard for and enjoy it. If somebody signs up for one of my games and it's from 7th to 9th level, we'll say, for the expected levels, they may be there for for any number of reasons, but one of the reasons they might be there is because they like that level of play. Okay, you better reflect it. I mean, you've got to give them an opportunity to use their abilities, use all the traits that you get with all that. When you fight the hill giant, you want that ranger there with that +9 damage against that guy. You want the player to sit there and his eyes get big as saucers and say, I cannot wait for this guy.
Right. I mean, that's what's great about even the Giant series is that you find giant slaying swords so that you give it to the ranger and they're doing stupid damage. You know, that's great. That's
right.
let them do that. And but that's the balance of I think it's very fair. If you give them a weapon and then nerf it right away and go, oh no, you can't use that.
You don't want to do that. And it becomes, if you do that in a convention environment within the span of 2 hours of play, it's very obvious to the player what you're trying to do. Yeah. And you're really going to really hurt their experience.
Can a halfling thief backstab a hill giant?
I don't think so.
Yes, they can technically.
But
they've got Achilles.
But they got to get up there. Do they? Oh, they've
got
Achilles.
An Achilles tendon.
Oh, so you allow. So Jay, it sounds like you're not a fan of the.
I'm pretty sure I have in the past. I think the rule is they have to have a back. So that's
they have a back.
They have a back.
They have a back.
So you would say yes. So you would say
I'm not going to let them backstab a gelatinous cube.
Right. Yeah, like an ooze or a pudding, they can't. So technically, they're
well, it's hard to sneak up on a gelatinous cube. Right.
Well, that's true.
You know, they surprise on like what is it, like a 1 to 4 or something crazy like that.
Some large amount. I think that's a question of and I was going to ask because I haven't played with Carlos. So when you prepare for an event, you have your adventure, you wrote it, so clearly you know what's about to happen because you've wrote it yourself. When you sit down, first thing you sit with your players, you're at a convention. Do you do a quick overview or you just give out characters? And why do you do it that way?
The very first thing I do is I have what's called a character draft.
Okay.
My character draft goes like this. Everybody rolls percentage dice. And I have a list of all the pre-gen characters that are available. High person picks go in descending. So you may get the character you want, you may not.
There's an exception. I know an exception to your rule.
Yes, there is an exception to my rule. Dan, you want to go ahead?
I believe it's if you have played that character before in a prior game, correct?
That is correct. For example, all the Marquesa pre-gen characters are the same. However, if you play the thief, the halfling thief from the first game, I will actually adapt that character for the third game based on what you've done.
Okay, cool.
For example, I'll give you a good example for that. The halfling thief in the Marquesa game happened to find a girdle of hill giant strength that they started wearing as a bandolier since they were a halfling.
Yeah.
All right, fine. That ended up on the sheet in the third edition. If you look at it, that was one way that. And what I'll do is I'll have an after action thing that I do with my players. I'll email them or something and I'll pose them 3 questions or so, and I'll say, hey, if you would have found that evil sword, would you have done one of 3 things? Would you have sold it to the church in order to fund a resurrection of the paladin that died? That actually happened in the second game. Would you use it for yourself, or would you try and destroy it? And all 3 of them are going to reflect what happens in the next pre-gen character sheet. So in that sense, people that come back to my games, they're rewarded with a little bit more of a living experience. But you were asking about what I do in the beginning of games, and that is the draft is first, and then I'll have everyone go around and they will introduce themselves and their character.
Okay. Do spellcasters get to pick their? Obviously, clerics can pick their spells, but magic users, looters, do you tell them the spells are in their book, or allow them to pick them?
Yeah, I do tell them the spells that not only they're in their book, but they have memorized at the beginning of the game, and I do that for 2 reasons. Number one, I've been at convention games where that doesn't happen, where the DM says, this is your spell book, have fun, pick what you want. And that DM in particular also said, in fact, if you want to swap out something for something else, let me know. That process took out 45 minutes of a convention game. It killed a lot of the momentum of that game because also you've got people around there like thieves and rangers and fighters who had no horse in the race, and they just were sitting there unoccupied. And I think that's death for a game. You really don't. You want your players to be engaged at all times. You want them always feeling like they're in the middle of something, even if the action isn't happening directly to them. So That's one reason why I do it. And the second reason is it helps me again calibrate the adventure to some degree. If I know your capabilities, I can calibrate the threat level a little bit better.
And so kind of another best practice, or is this a best practice when you're running at a convention? You don't start with 30 minutes of exposition and quest gathering. They like in the old school, you're in front of the secret door and you go and High Point and you're going into the temple. Or do you?
One of my favorite con games that I've actually played in ever was Alan Growe's Castle Greyhawk game. And Alan did this one to us. He goes, well, you guys have been plumbing through Castle Greyhawk now for the last 3 days. That was the exposition. You're right here in this room. Go for it. And I mean, he cut out the middleman entirely. We were right there in the action. It was great. So yes, I feel like cutting out a lot of that exposition in a convention game is essential. It's not as essential when you're in a campaign game and you're all around the table, and the role-playing aspect of the game is at its highest there. So that's to be expected. But in the con game, you want to get to the action right away.
And I'll say one of the things that I like about your style, Carlos, is that you really challenge the players. I never get the sense that you're going to give us a break. I mean, you're going to require us to be successful on our own. But in the same vein, I always get the sense that you're rooting for the players. That I really get the sense that you're just sort of an umpire there. And if the baddies are coming, well, it's because the baddies are coming. It's not because you want the baddies to come. They just happen to be coming, but you're rooting for the players.
Yes, that is exactly my point of view. My point of view actually is I'm the environment. I'm the world, basically. I'm there to present you a situation where you are and to show you how nature reacts to what you've done. That's it. That's the list. That's my job. There's a lot of DMs out there that that are almost antagonistic to their players. That's not my style at all. As a writer, I'm there to cheer on the heroes too. If bad things happen to them, well, so be it. But yeah, I'm there to cheer them on. I want them to succeed. I want them to have fun.
I remember in the Marquesa My Name is Evil game that I was in, where things, as they often do, started to get a bit out of control early on. Alarms being sounded, as often happens, and I remember when we, we're, if I recall correctly, we're frantically cleaning up bodies and shoving them in rooms. We're trying to clean up blood and stuff like this.
Oh yeah.
And I remember you saying to us at the end of all that, you went out of character for a second. You said, "Guys, that almost got ugly really quick." And it was really like you again. It wasn't you controlling it. You were just describing what was naturally going to happen to our poor characters. Right. So,
yeah, about the Marquesa thing, one thing that I like to do when I'm doing a design for a module, especially if it's got a big bad guy that's intelligent, you better be ready for alarms. The way I design a module is I put myself in their shoes, and I say, if I had to defend this place, this dungeon, this environment, how would I handle that, given the resources I know that character has? But yeah, in that particular case, I was like, I saw everything that was happening. I knew where everybody was on the map. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys have maybe a round or two left before this gets really bad. Right. Well, and you managed to pull it out. But do you know what my favorite part of that module actually was when you guys ran that? One of our players at the table was Nick Villanueva, and he was playing with me for the first time. And he sat down and he was playing a paladin in the game. And the paladin had this big rivalry with Marquesa's lead henchman, who is Tasman Ilvarzi, a good soul girl there with that name. But anyway, when she showed up, she was supposedly dead. But Marquesa, being the brilliant surgeon that she is, she was almost like this undead, kind of half-living, half whatever now. When she showed up, actually, and faced off with Nick's character, he turned around, his eyes got big as saucers, and I was like, yes, I have nailed this. Because what it meant to me is he had assumed enough of the character, and the game was going well enough that he was like, oh no. he realized the rivalry. He realized that character that was there, and he knew how bad it was about to get.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the best feeling, isn't it? When when you've got backstory in an adventure, and then the players start getting involved in it and buy into it as well, and start, because really, as DMs, don't we want to help create a story along with the players? We don't want to drive it, right?
It's a shared mythology. I mean, you're making these legends with your players, and it's part of why I root for them. You know, I want the story to be cool. You know, and whether or not it ends, it's cool because it's, you know, that everyone ends up dying in a cool way, or whether or not they succeed, that's up to them. But yeah, that's part of it. Is you want that whole shared. You know, you're in this consensual dream together,
Right.
and it's amazing like that. But the thing that I really appreciate about that is it's really hard to do in a convention setting when you've got 3 hours
Yeah.
and you're not throwing exposition out at players. Man, you've got to be really you've got to hit that on the head right at a convention just to get that whole feel. And a lot of it, that's why on the back of you guys' character sheets I sent you, you'll notice that there's a large background for the characters.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that real quick.
I did that on purpose because I want, if that's how you create that kind of thing.
Can I, and before we switch that, can I mention one thing?
Sure.
Because, you know, you've mentioned Nick and how you enjoyed his play at the convention, but...
If you're out there, Nick, you did great.
He did great, but who...
And he's also an Orlando boy like you guys.
Well, South Florida, actually, with his brother
South
Dan,
Florida? Okay.
South Florida.
Okay.
But who was the most outstanding player?
The most outstanding player of that, I believe, was Jason Wyndham.
Dan, most outstanding player.
Oh,
actually,
you won the most outstanding player. I didn't remember that.
There's
You won.
There's a backstory to this, which I think you'll remember once I bring it up.
Hey, Carlos, it was great seeing you. Thanks. We don't need to know anything more. You finished this session great. We found out who the real best player is.
Yeah.
Because for months we've heard how he's the best player. This is forgery.
And what's really amazing is you have amazing handwriting.
The handwriting that he forged of you is amazing.
Yes.
Because clearly,
thank you very
it's clearly not your handwriting because he's not the best player.
And I meant to thank you for it. I didn't at the time. How much time you spent writing that inscription, because you took a lot of time and you obviously wanted to make sure it looked really nice, and I appreciate that. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And I should mention, it's a bit of a joke, this most outstanding player, because if you may recall, you felt that we all had done a good job, and you would find it difficult to select a single most outstanding player. And one of the players at the table suggested that we roll for it, and you said, sounds great. We all agreed to it. And the player to my left rolls a 00, and everyone is in amazement. I roll it.
And that was Jason Wyndham. That's why I thought it was him.
There you go. And I roll it, and I roll a 00. And so it was just random that I got the most. I don't consider myself actually the most outstanding player there. It was random, and we both rolled a 00. So that's.
But you did do a great job. So let me square the record here for everybody down there in Florida. Okay. Dan actually did do a great job. It's not a forgery.
Thank you.
It's not a forgery.
Thank you.
Hold on. The podcast. I'm sorry, the stream is failing right now.
James, I accept James's apology.
Hold on. There's
a storm here. I think there's a fire a couple doors down. There's fire trucks. We may have to go to our car.
You're breaking up, Carlos. You may have to call back.
James, I accept your apology. Thank you.
It sounds to me that our guest is being very gracious to you, but I appreciate that. That's why I think you like him. That's wonderful.
James has played with me. He's incredulous that I came back with that.
No, that's wonderful.
If you've listened to the adventures of Pixie and Glade, it would be startling.
Well, maybe in a group session, maybe in a group setting, you do better. I think you do better with others. You're more of
too many players. Yeah, Pixie and Glade, these are characters that we rolled up to do some mock combat here, and it's 2 characters. They're both multi-class. It's a lot to juggle, isn't it, Carlos? That would be challenging for any player, wouldn't it?
Yeah. When you're dealing with multi-class players, there's a lot of variables that you have to juggle yourself. And what I find it does a lot of times is it hampers the role-playing element. Right. If you've got a fighter cleric magic user character that's an elf, you're focusing on numbers a lot of times more than you're focusing on that character. It takes a superior role player to be able to do that.
Well, and So maybe I'm not. And so let's say someone was playing a cleric ranger along with another multi-class character. That's a lot to juggle. So it might not be surprising that they would forget they're a cleric now and then. Isn't that right, Carlos?
Yeah. Actually, I hate to say this, but the truth is that when I was creating pre-gens last night, actually for my for one of my newer modules, and there's a cleric ranger in it. I did forget to put down cleric spells at first.
See? Is this a good time to mention that I am a Patreon contributor to Carlos's site?
Oh,
he might be a little biased.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Well, this explains a lot.
That's good.
Why?
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, you.
I love all of my patrons.
That's good. Well,
I love all of them.
And we love our one. Yes, because we started last week, so we're.
Oh, here's Carlos. You should be expecting a bump. You're going to be expect the GROGTALK bump.
Yes.
Probably in sale, and in particular in Sweden. Now,
yes.
I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard that you guys are huge in Sweden.
Huge. We are, and I think the reason is because we broadcast so early here in the States.
That's right. It's like
the only people awake are in Sweden, and also not only we're going to get a ranking in Sweden for you. So expect you probably will have to go to Sweden at some point.
We may have to go with us to Sweden.
Sweden is a great country. Actually, when I was over in Europe, I got to play with a couple people from Sweden. And Anna Meyer is Swedish, by the way, who does great Greyhawk maps. Mm-hmm. Sweden's got a great game culture that goes all the way back. I mean, Anna used to run a game store back in a suburb of Oslo when she was back in the late 70s. So you got to remember, Sweden's got a big game culture to it, and there's a lot of really old school cool players there.
Well, apparently, because so I think at one point,
and I showed it, and in fact, the chart
is the internet doesn't lie.
The internet never lies. That's
we hit what? Did
10. We were the top 10 gaming podcast in Sweden per chart.
Wait, other games.
Well, it's the gaming / other gaming.
Oh,
other
okay.
Games.
We hit the top 10, and then immediately after that, we dropped to like 330 something, and we've remained in the 300s.
Hey, listen, you guys are ready for a comeback.
Right, so the whole challenge is...
We're not old enough for a comeback. Yeah. We've only been doing this for 4 months, and already we need a comeback.
Yeah, well, we started big, number 10, went to 330.
People were like, wow, this looks great. This is going to be really good.
Right, and unfortunately, as we've talked about it, our numbers have gone down. We're like 356 now, so I'm sorry to say.
Well, or the more episodes they've seen,
right?
It's sort of like at the beginning of the season, that team is out in first place. You're like, wow. And then, about 40 games in, it's reality.
Well, that's the Mets.
Or it can work the opposite way, where a team in last place at midpoint in the season can win the Stanley Cup.
Right.
Lose. Yeah. And let's not forget the amazing Mets in baseball.
That's right.
Speaking of other countries, my understanding, Carlos, is your wife, Amanda, is an Australian citizen. Is that right?
Oh, my goodness.
She is. She is. My wife is Australian, and... we go back there every couple years, go to visit and see the family and everything like that. Australia is an amazing place.
Oh, we're very familiar.
In fact, when I was in Australia 2 times ago, my second to last one is where I bought I got to buy my Expedition to Castle Greyhawk book.
Cool.
Because I wanted something D&D wise to bring home with me.
Now, the next time you're in Australia, you're going to have to visit our Viceroy. GROGTALK has a Viceroy, a GROGTALK Viceroy.
Oh, you do?
Of course. Yes. This surprises you?
Mildly.
Right, because you've only heard about Sweden.
That's right.
I didn't think that Viceroys were a thing in Australia.
Well, he wanted to be a Thane. I think we're going to make... But we
Can he be both? I don't know what either of those are.
Right.
Is this Heath?
No, this is David Thompson, who's been one of our early listeners, and he's in Adelaide, which is in the south of the country, in the capital of South Australia. And he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we crowned him or proclaimed him the Viceroy. We went through all the titles within the Dungeon Master's Guide. And
I want you to know I'm expecting a title at the end of this, but
absolutely. You could... One of
the great backers of Gary Con and another first edition guy is Heath, who is also in Adelaide.
Really?
So
okay.
If you're out there right now watching this, Heath, and he's a friend of mine. There you go. Now you have somebody out there to play with in Adelaide.
There's two. That's right, and they're only 14 hours ahead. So right now it's Yeah, it's about
Don't
11 o'clock, so they're dedicated.
And Carlos, this is, I think, where you find out who your true supporters are, because we started at 8 in the morning. Your true
Right.
So if any of them are watching this now, they're
Yeah.
true supporters.
All right, well, we got to...
Oh, they're
Go ahead.
hard chargers. Hard chargers.
We got to give him we got to give him a title. Not give him. We have to bestow a title because he's in Ohio. He's clearly in the Ohio Valley. He's now our... we have to get a title for that.
So he'll be our Ohio Valley.
Yeah, well...
What do you want to be?
Yeah, what would you like to be while we're
Is
here?
there a particular title that you...
I don't know. Do I get a choice?
Yeah, of course.
Well, you can request.
I kind of like Baron Carlos.
Oh.
Baron Carlos has kind of a nice nickname
Okay.
to it.
I like that. We can,
and
we can
speaking
reserve
of
that.
your name, tell us.
Yeah.
So casl Entertainment is not CASTLE. It is.
No, it is not. It is my initials. Carlos Albino Sebastian Lising.
I love that.
Yeah.
CASL, casl Entertainment.
Yeah.
That,
It is half. I'm half Filipino, so that is where that comes
Wonderful. I had a good friend, Leonard, who when I went to high school was from the Philippines, so that's awesome. But yes,
from. I guess Carlos Lising is not uncommon in the Philippines.
interesting. Yeah, so I think Baron of the Ohio Valley region of GROGTALK.
Baron
Castle.
What sounds better, Baron Carlos or Baron Lising?
Oh, that is...
Lising has
I
a
don't
nice...
know. I'll leave that to you guys. You guys are bestowing the titles.
Well, we have our friends and associates, and the whole kingdom has to be set up, and we have to pick a level for him too, because that was a thing we had last time. You thought he was...
Ooh.
Oh, what race and class would you like to be?
Well, I'm definitely a magic user. That's my highest level class I've ever played.
Okay.
So I will definitely be a magic user. But as far as level goes, I got to leave that to you as well. Again, I mean that's a big step.
We're gonna roll it. What die should we roll? Do you think?
Oh,
I think
boy.
a D20.
D20.
Let him roll a D20.
Okay, you should roll your fate.
That's right.
Hey,
All right, I'll roll a D20.
You know he's got dice nearby. He's a real gamer.
This is gonna be ugly here. Yes, 19.
Whoa,
Wonderful.
Wow, he could kill us. We need to be. He's in charge.
Fortunately, he's in a land far away. He has...
How far is Fireball? What's the range on a Fireball?
Not to Florida. Fortunately.
Well, okay.
The fact he could time stop and do other things is more of a
that's a wizard, right?
Oh, yeah, he could do wish.
Can I teleport a delayed blast fireball?
I think you probably could at that level. You'd be working on it.
There you go. Teleport without air,
Wow.
delayed blast fireball.
So kind of, you mentioned the alarms. I just reminded me of how encyclopedic the DMG is, and sometimes it's not. We asked this from some of our other guests that this is not a manual on how to DM. It's a manual of picking things out. And I remember when I was young, reading on page 104 and 105, monsters and organization, and how the party discovers a fortress and attacks. And I remember reading that, going, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. If they attack, they would organize that. But in the modules, a lot of modules, I won't say all of them, but a lot of them don't talk about how you have to react. They just assume you have that skill set. And I think superior DMs like you say, hey, if you're going to assault someplace, you're not trying to cover your tracks. This is what's going to happen. And I think part of it is when you read the DMG, some of it is so necessary, but it's buried in two other pages, and you really don't know how important. So,
Dan, you've read Marquesa over there next to you. Every room will talk about how they intend on defending it and how it links in with other efforts to protect the installation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very appropriate to do that, especially since most of her cohort is at least of passable intelligence to do that.
And that's what I've found to be the most challenging part of DMing, is thinking on the fly, what are the baddies doing when they're not in front of the player characters, right? They've been beaten off. How are they regrouping? Who are they grabbing? I've often, with my adventures, is I write a list, because I run modules that have been written, a list of every monster that's in the place, kind of like, okay, this is the force that's available to the big bad to group. But I found that to be very challenging.
Right.
When do they attack? When will they arrive? Who will arrive?
So Dan, whether you know it or not, you took Jim Ward's advice about module design
That's
by
right.
doing that.
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah, and not in the random sense, but yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Right. What is in here? Um,
Yeah, having the ability to know what is in the environment shapes how the characters it indelibly shapes the way the characters interact in it.
Absolutely. Do we have time to talk about some passions that Carlos and I share?
Yeah, sure, we can do that. And then probably, Carlos, how long is it going to take to? Because one of the things again that Dan had impressed upon me was what he really appreciated as your style was how evocative you made combat. And so you've offered to you've sent us a couple of characters. We're very excited. How long do you think that's going to take to do? Because I want to make sure we have plenty of time.
15 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right, so
and I took the fighter. I gave you because spellcasters are.
Well, I love this. Is awesome.
Carlos, when you said that you wanted to be a mag, right? So we know that Baron. I like Baron. Baron Carlos sounds good.
Yeah.
Baron Lising sounds a little evil.
Right.
So we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But you said you wanted to be a magic user. Is what drew you to pick magic user the very first time you played the same reason why you just picked magic? So have you always had an affinity for a spellcaster? I
always have, and I always thought one of the things I really thought was cool when I just talked about this in my Patreon, as a matter of fact, in an article about how Lord of the Rings has indelibly shaped the D&D experience. And for me, as I mentioned, I just read it, and I thought the coolest thing, they had this secret cabal of wizards with, Saruman the White and Gandalf the Gray and Radagast the Brown. And I was like, and I thought it was even cooler that we didn't even know anything about a lot of these guys, but they were there. And I thought it was really mysterious, and I wanted to be part of that. I guess it's part of why some of my favorite NPCs in Greyhawk to this day are the Circle of Eight.
Then you probably liked the backstory to Xenopus, right? Which is this wizard who, if I recall correctly, right, it was engulfed. The tower was engulfed
Absolutely.
in flame or bright light.
I thought to myself, man, I'm going to seize that power. Yeah, it didn't go so good.
I'm surprised that you haven't written sort of a follow-up to Xenopus, as sort of an homage to your first adventure.
Well, all of my patrons do get a say in the kind of things I write, so I think that you may have just started something.
Oh, excellent!
Oh, excellent. Very cool.
Flame has caught on. So, a couple things. Yeah, so a couple things. So, we share. I believe, I could be wrong. We share a love for gnomes. Wow.
No, absolutely not.
I'm stunned.
I'm totally kidding. I love
gnomes. Okay, because I was pleasantly surprised to see a module with gnome samurai. And also, as a Patreon supporter, I clicked on some of you get NPCs, right? As one of the benefits.
You get 3 a month.
Which is really nice, particularly for people who are running adventures and don't want to spend time, because it takes a long time to write up a good, pre-gen character. I shouldn't say NPCs.
Good pre-gen character takes me about 30 minutes to do like what I've done for you guys over there. But there's an attrition to it. I mean, once you've done about 4 or 5 of them a night, you're roasted.
To be sure. And I think I may have said NPC. I meant pre-generated characters. I clicked on the 3 that was available to me, and each one was a gnome. So
yeah, you signed up during Gnome Month.
Gnome Month.
I have one of my good friends, and if he's out there right now, this is for you, Jeremy. He's a huge gnome fan, and the last couple months I've been doing things that are geared directly towards one of my patrons, stuff I know that they'll just love. So that was a nod to him. He played the same character that you did actually in Marquesa, Ilsandra Sunshower.
Oh, that's right, because he sat out. He was nice. He made room for another player, and which is very nice of him.
Yeah, Jeremy's a great guy. In fact, those guys will be playing in my patron campaign game, which kicks off tonight at 8:00 EST.
Oh, yes, wonderful. And we wanted to mention that, right? Because, that's on what? It's on Twitch TV tonight at 8:00, you said?
Yep. Mm-hmm. It'll be on my Twitch channel, casl, Twitch TV twitch.tv/Castle Entertainment, one word.
Okay.
And you'll get to see me run a campaign game that will be ongoing with my highest contributing patrons. It's going to be set in the world of Greyhawk, and it's going to be a blast. Everything that they do is going to be commemorated in a module.
wonderful.
From us.
Fantastic. And I believe on Sunday night, you'll be on Jay Scott's Twitch channel, right, with all sorts of Greyhawk
I will.
luminaries.
Yeah, I'm gonna be up there punching above my weight with people like Anna Meyer and Mike Bridges and Jay. All the people. It's basically a who's who of the Greyhawk world right now.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited to have been invited to that. As you know, I was invited to the Greyhawk panel at GaryCon this year. So yeah, it's great. It feels good to be included in a group with those kind of people that are I look up to their work.
I think before we're done today.
Well, we talked about gnomes. I feel like you mentioned gnomes because I'm maybe not as much of a fan. So what I'm hearing.
Oh,
go ahead, Carlos.
Okay. Let me drop my thesis on gnomes on you. Maybe this will help you a little bit about it. All right. Here's my thesis on gnomes. Tolkien mythology shaped Dungeons and Dragons indelibly. That is usually the vector drug for most of us getting into D&D is The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. All right. So let's take a quick look at the reflection of races in those. We have humans. We have elves. We have halflings, hobbits, and we have dwarves. Who is missing?
No one. Oh, sorry.
Well, Bill Ferny may have been a half-orc. We're not sure, but okay, yeah. So
No, but the important thing to know about that is people. What is possible to them is shaped a lot by those experiences of what they read.
Right.
So when they don't see those gnomes reflected, that becomes something that isn't there anymore. So I think that the reason why the gnomes aren't all that popular of a race is, number one, people associate them with the cutesy garden gnomes.
right.
And number two, because they're not reflected in Tolkien fantasy.
Right. I think you're 100% correct. I love them because they like to play. So I think we associate with character classes and races that we think of ourselves sort of like. And so they sort of joke around and they like to play tricks. And so that's why I like them.
Well, they like to play tricks, but they're not very funny, which is like a gnome.
Just like me.
Well, you could imply that.
Right, exactly.
So what I'm hearing, Carlos, is you're embrace Greyhawk, which is wonderful. Again, that was the first setting that I really knew of. And you're taking and expanding the world by. So what I'm going to suggest, if anyone was going to be a patron of GROGTALK, instead, if you can't afford both, be a patron for Carlos's Castle Entertainment, because he will write a module that I'm going to suggest. Instead of Tomb of Horrors, Tomb of Gnomish Horrors. That's the module that I want to see, that you write.
Oh, wait, could it have those? Is it going to be Zerfneblin?
It would be.
Ian,
It could be whatever.
James, maybe what you could do, maybe Dan can give you his copy. In Gnomish Month, the Monster of the Month, because I do a Monster of the Month too, is a demon that is specifically hates gnomes and is trying to destroy gnomish culture wherever he can across the world of Greyhawk.
Is he called the James Meister? Because that would be amazing. That's my alter ego. That's gonna be my icon.
He's a unique demon, and he's right up your alley.
Yeah, his frequent. If I run a game that has a gnome, that'd be. You remember frequency? It would be frequent. That would be,
right.
In fact,
more than
every time the gnome,
ubiquitous.
Even more than
ubiquitous. That's right.
Ever present.
Right. He's constantly here. Once he's done that, so yeah, that's look. I don't have any issues with.
Well,
gnomes.
and as I mentioned, you have a module, Carlos, right? That features gnome samurai. Is that correct?
I do. This has kind of a little bit of an elaborate background, so I'll try and go as quickly as I can. At GaryCon, my Marquesa game that I ran, the very first one, which was called Kill Marquesa, had 12 players in it, one of which was Luke Gygax, and it went off incredibly well, better than I could have possibly expected. And I started getting questions from people, hey, are you going to run anything else at the show? Okay, yeah, I'll run something else. So I went up to my room and I totally Tony Starked an adventure. I just basically went to work on there, created it out of nothing, and I ran it. And 3 of the characters in there ended up being gnomes, and they loved it. And they said, hey, we want to run a sequel to this next year.
Wait, what do you mean?
So I wrote...
I'm sorry,
what's that?
What do you mean ended up? So it makes it sound like you randomly rolled gnomes, or you picked 3.
Oh, no, they part of the whole way that it worked, the game worked, is you could choose your class and race.
Oh.
They chose to be gnomes.
Oh.
So they end up having 3 gnomes, and I wrote a module called In Nomine Septem about that, which is in the name of the 7. It is an homage to the 7 samurai. for any of you who know who the god Merlin is in the world of Greyhawk, he's basically a cowboy. And so what I did was I took the whole idea of Seven Samurai slash a Magnificent Seven and decided I'm going to turn it on its head. What if all the characters were gnomes? And instead of it was a little bit more humorous than my normal fare because that's what the players particularly liked. Well, they loved that one, so they wanted another sequel. So this year I ran Who Sits Upon the Oaken Throne, and next year I'm going to run the conclusion to the 3 modules, which is as of yet unnamed.
Okay. So yeah, so if you're going to a convention and you want to play a frivolous character that you would normally not play, you play a gnome. I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense. So,
Very condescending.
Huh?
Very condescending.
Well, I'm not condescending. I'm just stating my opinion.
Right, use the word.
Huh?
Dan, I will mention that the second greatest published gnome in the world of Greyhawk would be Count Imeric von Susevaren, who is the retainer to Nistel of the Circle of Eight.
Oh, wow.
So, excuse me, of Odaluk, not Nistel. So, and he is a hardcore fighter illusionist type. He's not a jokester. He's a hard charger.
See?
So,
oh yeah,
he flies in the face of the conventional take on gnomes a little bit, which is why, if you'll notice on the 3 gnomish NPCs you got this year, one of them was similar to that in tone.
Well, maybe that guy.
I want to reflect that was a part of the culture.
Well, maybe you could have a segment where that guy kills James's character.
Okay.
That would be fun.
Well, and tonight's game that DM John is running tonight, I am playing Dwinkle. Dwinkle Pugh. Dwinkle Pugh.
Dwinkle Pugh, who's a gnome. To pay. I know it's a gnome. What fighter illusionist?
Fighter illusionist.
And you chose that.
I chose that.
Oh, he talks that way.
Yes,
I like
choose
Count.
like a no.
What about Count? Count Lising.
Count Lising.
You know what? Before
or
this
Count
is
Castle.
done,
I mean, there's a lot of choices, and we'll defer. You do not have to make this choice now. You can email because we'll put your heraldry on our site, so you can decide.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think before we're done, can we pull out the Greyhawk map and just point to it, and then we can talk about the location?
Okay. Yeah. Let's do this because I know that Jeannie's going to be calling 15 minutes, and he said like Geico, he'll have us dead in 15 minutes or less. So, so Carlos.
That's too bad. That was a great idea about the World of Greyhawk map. I'd love that.
Well, we'll do it right after. So Jeannie will call, and then we'll point at the map, and we'll do that, and then we'll wrap up. So it'll be perfect.
Sounds good.
So just for background for our folks, and by the way, we're on the chat. We're also, you can call us 474-766-6779 on the GROGTALK. So Carlos has graciously offered to demonstrate his DM skills Saturday morning, which again, I really appreciate. So he has sent us a couple of characters. So Carlos, take it away. You're in charge now.
Okay. As you guys have seen on your character sheets, one of you is the fighter and one of you is the magic user. Which one of you guys has chosen which character?
I am Floki Bjornsson.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, Floki.
So I am legendary amongst the Kruski. And right now, as a hero of the Kruski, I was able and successfully saved the small village of Bortu. And I have been now summoned by the Jarlandi to defeat potentially the invisible warrior and dragon and other nefarious creatures. And hopefully with my skill and being part of the invisible agents, I will be able to extract justice and defend the land.
Awesome. Dan?
I am Haukur Olafsson. I'm a fighter. I hail from the small village of Bear Hearth along the icy sea. I made a name for myself spearheading a warband of ice barbarians that met a small orcish army descending from the heights of the Korisk Mountains to prey on the tiny settlements of the tundra. My staunch bravery and terrifying ferocity upon that gruesome made my name known across the whole of the Kruski land. Indeed, it is said that the mere mention of it is enough to stiffen the spines of the Korisk humanoids with respect, and more than a little fear. So it is that few were surprised when Jarlind of Jotsplat called Haukur to her throne to serve as a champion for the Ice Barbarians. I know well the stories of the White Rider and his horrific mount, but fear is a stranger to a man such as me. I am prepared to wrestle his dragon of the earth and snap its neck, and with my bare hands, if I must, all for the glory of Krusky.
Hail, Krusky.
Hail, Krusky.
Right on. Okay, you guys are both barbarian characters. You both have your classes. You've managed to the both of you have managed to trail the White Rider with the rest of your party. You've gone across land. It's overland to the feet of the Korisk Mountains. It's been a very arduous trip for both of you. Your mounts are very tired, but the word that you have gotten from the witches in the Yarlin's employ have told you that the White Rider will be found within a small hidden redoubt, which is at the feet of the mountains. You've managed to find a slowly turning stairwell that descends about 30 feet into the ground before it goes to blackness. The stairs are all covered with loose snows and rime. All around you, the winds are buffeting you back and forth. Your beards are covered in ice. Eyebrows are covered in snow. It's been getting inside of there will almost be a relief no matter what kind of danger you find in there. Please give me a marching order and tell me what you do.
Well, you're the magic user, so you should go
I
first.
should go first. That's right.
I should go first, right?
I say Horkor.
Haukur Olafsson shall be in front.
Yes.
Well, how wide is the stairway?
About 5 feet wide.
Yes.
A single file. Yes, I will go first.
And I will.
Okay.
Floki will stand behind. Horkor. Perhaps this White Rider is very powerful, as we know. Perhaps I should cast invisibility. I am a purveyor of the invisible arts, and I will stand behind you so that potentially you can get a jump on him.
That sounds like a fine plan. I'm getting cold. Shall we get?
Yes,
I'm freezing.
Well, I could cast fireball on you, but that would not
Please
be.
do not do that.
Okay, we
is
should not
there?
do that.
So looking down, Carlos, is it dark down there? Are we gonna need? Do we sense we'll need a light source?
Down as you get closer to the stairwell, you notice that perhaps it's hard to tell as the hallway turns, but you do see something flickering like torchlight.
Okay, good. So
So I'm going to
Floki.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Floki, I'd like you to roll me a 20-sided dice, please.
Okay. 13.
Floki, having studied the monsters that walk the world for as long as you have, you know that what Hauker said must certainly be true, because if he was going to get his white dragon mount down here, then certainly foul magics must be afoot.
Yes. So I will relay this information to Hoku, and I cast invisibility on him, and then I'm going to say, every 10 feet stop, don't continue or else I'll bash into you, because I want you to be invisible.
So I have the invisibility, not you.
Yes.
Okay.
How far distant are you from one another?
Well, I'm going to be 15 feet behind him, going as we
Excellent.
descend down the stairs, and then at the
Okay, Hauker. Hauker, are you going to use any sort of illumination besides the torch that you think you see down there?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm going to have bad...
Hauker, as you begin to descend the twisting stair, stairs are steep, and you have to be very careful as you traverse them, because they're covered in ice. Even inside of this place, you can feel that it feels like the marrow of the mountains themselves have been frozen to the bone by the bitter cold that ensconces the land over here in the barbarian lands. You go down further. The wind abruptly stops as you get far enough down that the tunnel actually begins to it kills it. Floki, you feel the same thing. Just getting out of the cold is good. As you get further down the twisting stair, Hauker, you notice that on the wall there is a sconce, but ahead of you there's a door.
Okay, so straight ahead of me.
Straight ahead of you there's a door. It is bound in iron at the top of it and the bottom of it. The door looks like it has a traditional push catch on it.
Okay. I wait till Floki comes to join me.
Yes.
I say, Floki, shall we listen at the door?
Yes, we shall listen.
Okay, shall we each listen? So
Well, we can listen. Both of us can listen at the same time.
That's right.
In
Both,
hushed tones, we listen.
We're going to take off our headgear. Well, I'll take off my headgear, and we're each going to listen at the door.
I'd like you both to roll me a 1d6, please.
All right. I rolled a 1.
I rolled a 3.
Floki, inside of there, you don't hear anything, Hauker, except for the sound of your own pulse in your veins because you're so amped up, you're so revved up for the possibility of battle. Floki, you know that Hauker has often given to the berserker spirit. It's one of the things he's best known for is his ability to lose himself to rage in battle. He's very unpredictable, but he's like a whirlwind of steel when that happens. So it doesn't surprise you at all that he can't hear what your sharp ears do pick up behind you. And back there, you hear something. It sounds like something walking around frozen grass.
Okay.
It sounds like footsteps, but there's a lot of them.
So, Hokar.
You hear something kind of like, for a short period of time, you hear something like a rabbit trill, and then it stops.
There is movement afoot past where we've listened, Hokar.
I hear a beating heart in there, I believe.
That's telltale heart, exactly.
So, all right, so let's open the door. Let me go in. I will destroy them all.
And we know these are enemies of us. There is no chance for...
There is no doubt that these are enemies of yours, because anything that would be out this far away from you is either it's either a rival tribe or it's inimical to you. Perhaps it might be the humanoids that descend from the Korisks that Hauker has fought against so long.
So I say to Hauker in hushed tones, perhaps you should open the door and I unleash a fireball in there, and then use what you do best, Hokar. Instill your fury and destroy what is left.
That's an excellent plan.
Unless the room is too close and I burn ourselves. But that's another story. We'll worry about that when I open the door. So I'm going to step as far back. Go ahead.
I have an intelligence of 7 and a wisdom of 7.
Okay, so you're going to go with whatever I say. That's great.
Sounds good to me.
So
you're the brains, he's the brawn.
So I tell he's going to Hokar is going to open the door. Floki, me, is going to step as far back as I can. He's going to open the door. Hopefully, I can survey what's in the room. And if the room is large enough to accept a fireball without it blowing back into me, I will prepare my guano and sulfur and cast it.
The good news for you, Floki, is that because the stairs go directly down to the door, you can actually be slightly above where he stands.
Excellent.
And you can actually toss this fireball over his shoulder. So it's a solid strategy.
That's what we do.
Hauker, you put your hands on the door. You almost have to. Your fingers are actually, you have to force them to bend around the door because you've been so long on your journey. But you push down the catch on it, and you throw open the door as you said you would. Yep. Within the room that you see, the room, because you're at the door, your sense of scope beyond the door is skewed. You can't see exactly how far the room goes, but it goes farther than you're capable of seeing. Okay. So your first instinct is, yes, it will accept a fireball.
And then I will cast it as we said.
Okay. Hauker, you see inside of there's all these little creatures that are in there. They look like foxes, white foxes, probably about 2 feet long. They're about maybe about your knee in height, and they all look up at you as if surprised. There's 7 of them. They're all in the walking around this like frozen, it looks like moss almost. It looks like they were eating out of it previously. But Floki, you go ahead and you toss your fireball in there, right?
Yes, I do. Yes.
I get out of the way.
Yes, I say stand behind the door. Behind the door, and I launch.
Well, because of the way the doorway goes into there really is no behind.
That's right. The door opens into the room.
Correct. So Floki goes ahead and throws the fireball in there.
I will.
Floki, I'd like you to roll me your damage, please.
Very well.
I believe 5d6.
That's correct. I am a 5th level magic user.
Yep.
So 13 and 2 more dice, and 8 is 21.
Hauker, you hear Floki recite the arcane incantation behind you. He throws his sulfur in the air, which ignites above his hand without flame. Right away, you taste the scent of magic in the air. His hand traces around in a circle like a ball around his hand. The air itself seems to ignite as he throws the guano into it. He reaches back and throws his hands forward, and this massive ball, flaming ball, skirts past your ear. You've been cold so long that it feels almost like your ear almost breaks for it. It seems the sheer heat as it goes through the air makes the air around it seem to shriek for a moment as the fireball bolts past you, lighting up the entire inside of the hallway, the corridor, in the room beyond. These little foxes look up as Floki throws the ball in there, and all you can see is this huge inferno explode upwards around there. You've seen it before. You've seen him throw a fireball, and it's majestic, it's incredible, and you expect to see nothing but charred bones inside. But instead, something comes flying at you. Instantly, this wall of vegetation comes flying at you. I need you to make me a saving throw, please.
Okay. Both of us or just Hokar?
Both of you.
I have an 11. Is it against spells?
No, it would be against breath weapon.
Oh, well, I totally failed.
I made it.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Okay, Floki.
He's rolling a lot of
Is this
dice.
incomprehensible death?
Please take 29.
Okay, so you see, what? I don't know. You describe what happened to Floki.
Instantly, are you dead?
Oh yeah, very dead.
Instantly, what you see, Floki, is the last thing you see is this wall of this. You smell something pungent in the air, and this brownish-looking, moldish substance just fills the entire corridor backwards for you.
That's awesome.
Hauker, you are swimming in this brown mold, and the entire time you feel the heat leaching out of your flesh. You can feel it was even the teeth of it are far worse than even the cold outside. You're feeling your fingernails shatter inside of your gloves. You're shaking uncontrollably inside.
Have I taken any damage?
You feel like your bones are going to shatter inside of your skin.
Have I taken any? Have I taken any damage?
Yes, you've taken 29 points of damage. Or, excuse me, you've taken 14 points of damage.
Okay. All right.
But you're going to continue to take serious damage from this point onwards because you're now surrounded in the brown mold that they were eating on the floor there that now fills the entire hallway.
Well, so what do I see on the inside of these? Were these foxes still
You
there?
don't see anything.
Nothing.
You're surrounded. You're swimming literally in brown mold.
Oh, I'm going to try to, I would try to get my way out of this.
Forward or backward?
Oh, forward.
That's right.
This is Hauker.
That's right.
I'm going.
Make me another save, Hauker.
I'm on fire. Well,
not on fire anymore.
hopefully not literally. 15. I made it.
Take 15. You feel the life begin to leach out of you. Your eyes are getting heavy. You're fighting against it, clawing through there. But it's up your nose. It's in your ears. And everything is freezing all around you. Your eyes, you can't see anymore. What are you going to do? You're going to just keep fighting forward?
I'm going forward.
Make me an intelligence check, please. 20, please.
My character, actually me.
Make me a 20.
13, I failed. I'm a 7 intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay, make me another save.
3, I failed. It was maybe less than 15 minutes.
That's right. Well, no, it's perfect because Jeannie's about to call.
Take 27.
Oh. I am at minus 11.
The last thing that you see, Hauker, the last thing you see is you claw through, you break through the brown mold with your hand, and you hit the wall. You were clawing the wrong way.
Oh, that's awesome. That is an incomprehensible
That is incomprehensible death. That's wonderful. Very good.
Now, I'm only at -11. So what's your death rule? Does that -11, would that be death?
Oh,
You'd be dead, because not only are you at beyond -10 hit points, but on top of that, there's really no escape for you at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
So thank you. That
was great.
That was incomprehensible.
That was it checked all the boxes.
It really did. Now, now, Carlos, what was that?
Oh, I literally did.
knows.
I literally did the worst thing I could have done.
So what happened? Can you give us
Yeah,
a recap?
but you know what? I suckered you into it. It's part of the design of your character sheet.
Yeah.
I suckered you into it.
Yeah, it's literally. Yeah, he gives me all this. Because next I was going to use the potion of fiery breath. That was my next thing I was going to use.
Well, so can we have a quick post game recap? What happened?
What you actually did was you guys ran just now through the second room in the adventure card I gave you, in which there are 7 Horfoxes, which are 2-hit dice creatures that are nastier than you would expect them to be. They're from the Fiend Folio, and what they do is they have a breath weapon in which they do 1 to 8 damage, right? You think it wouldn't be bad, except they hit you no matter what your armor class is, as if you were AC 10. Wow. So they can hit you pretty much automatically, no problem. So on top of that, you've got to either do one of two things. You've got to deal with the breath weapons, or you use a fire attack, which is the sensible thing, right? Except for the person that's in charge of that knows that if she lines the entire floor of this place with brown mold, 2 things will happen. Number 1, it will keep the room nice and cold, so the foxes will be happy because they're her pets. But second of all, on top of it, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
So
the Admiral.
The obvious answer to kill them with fire is the answer that'll kill you.
So the fireball basically caused.
So brown mold loves heat, and it grows exponentially when it has heat. So I literally just bloomed it. It's like I gave algae, a bunch of nitrates.
So you're at fault.
Yes. Oh, totally. I was texting Jeannie and Vic. Literally, the worst thing I could have done was get some fireball.
So that is our inaugural episode. Incomprehensible Death. Yes, thank you, Carl. Fantastic.
Floki would have been like, "Oh, this is perfect. I shoot the fireball, and then this brown mold explodes growth."
But this shows that Carlos is a great DM. Right. Is even when you die, you thank him.
That's right.
Because it was so picturesque, right? So descriptive.
Well, this is what happens with usually the people that play with us. They do that. They throw the thing and they walk out.
Yeah, right.
Well, they never throw anything.
They're just angry at you.
They just leave.
No, you need to work on you need to do what Carlos does. You kill the characters and they thank you.
Right.
Thank you for killing me.
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Did you feel like you were there?
Yeah.
Was it evocative?
Fantastic.
No, that was
awesome.
As a matter of fact, I honestly just wanted to sit and listen. I didn't even want to play. I just enjoyed. I wanted to hear a good story.
Yeah, it was great. The backstory, and I can see the amount of work that you put into the characters and
killing.
Well, and just the the setup, being creative with that.
Those 2 characters will appear again. Actually, they were created as pre-gens for the module I'm working on right now.
Okay.
So you'll see them actually appear in a Castle Entertainment project later.
Awesome. Right. Yeah, they're really
they're
flavorful.
And you guys will get playtesting credits for it.
That's why we were so helpful.
Well, the fireball does work. Check.
Yes.
Character notes, possibly more hit points. That would be helpful.
Yeah, when James and Dan play testing, it's basically, I don't need to change a thing.
That's right. Crash test dummies.
Right.
That's us.
Now that trap is now. I know that it's a winner.
Now, if the viewers of this though, now this is one of the benefits of viewing.
That's right.
GROGTALK. You get the insight into these adventures.
So I'm going to tell Jeannie she can call now.
Yes,
so speaking
and Carlos, can this happen? This can happen together, right? Carlos can remain online.
Yep, she'll be. She won't.
If I would have known she was going to be here, I'd have given her a character sheet too. She could have died with you guys.
That would have been awesome. Well, no. As you probably know, she plays in Vic Dorsa's game. She's had enough characters die.
Yeah.
I didn't know that actually. I didn't know.
Jeannie is Vic's significant other. And so, as a matter of fact, we were going to do an In Memoriam segment, and I was flooded with characters of
Right.
genies who have died.
That's right,
And
literally.
literally, like
I got to meet Vic 2 years ago at Gamehole Con, and then at Gary Con this year. He and I are acquaintances. I really don't know him super well though.
Yeah, he was on our show last week, and we did spring this.
Yeah, I watched.
Oh, thank
oh,
you.
you were the viewer.
That's right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank
We
you.
can hold on.
You used that gag. You used that gag last week.
It's
I
like
did.
this. It's like
Well,
it's like a murder mystery. Who did it? Who watched it?
Right. I used to say material. I'm sorry. You know, it's like I don't have a lot of new material. But you know what's interesting about the Dorso episode is on YouTube, it is about to be our most watched episode in like 5 days, and this is it's amazing to me.
Right, and our
skyrocketing.
downloads, we're doing 20 or 30 a day now. So
and we can't forget. And what's really surprising about Vic Dorso's episode doing so well is it only scored a 6 out of 10. That was its rating.
At the end, you get to roll a d10 to determine what level of.
I wondered how you guys did the determinant.
Wait, so you're going to randomly roll it.
You randomly roll how good it was. Okay.
You're going to randomly roll how good you are. So you can't blame us.
Okay. Okay.
We like random.
Well, hopefully she'll be calling in soon.
Well, the dice were hot for me for my level, so I hope they treat me pretty well there.
Here's another thing while we're waiting for G to call in. The second thing that we have in common is our love and respect of the traditional pig-faced orc.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, I have some miniature. You can get miniatures now. I believe there are some companies that will do pig-faced orc miniatures.
Yeah, I'm down with the pig-faced orc. I mean, that's the way that Gary wanted it. That's the way it's going to be.
I wonder if we know the story on that. Do we know the story on that picture, that drawing in the monster, how they ended up as pig-faced orcs?
Do not.
Yeah, I don't know that either. It'd be interesting if any of our viewers.
I probably should look in the Art and Arcana. I haven't read the whole thing. It's kind of like a coffee table book, wherever it is. It's over here.
It's a beautiful book. Right. It's a beautiful book. I've got mine right behind me here, but the format of it doesn't make you want to read it.
Right.
It makes it's an impediment to enjoying the book.
Yeah, it's more of a flip through, not a sit down and I'm going to read about this or that. So
I did have to read through it though, because Darlene, the artist, is a close personal friend of mine, and as a result, she and I had to read what they said about her.
Ah.
All right, let's see. I'm calling. Somehow she tried to call me. It didn't work. So let's see what's happening here.
And something I know you're a big fan of familiars. I enjoy
I'm a huge fan of.
You convinced me on that because James had warned me about some of the risks, the double damage, but you persuaded me that the benefits outweigh the detriments.
Especially if you happen to get a special, it breaks the game.
Yeah, sure. Because you get something, and you can use them as scouts. Some of the different familiars, which is very useful.
Hello.
Oh, I think we.
Yes, we have Hey, this is James, and with Dan and Carlos. You're on GROGTALK Live. How are you?
Hello, Jeannie.
Good. How are you? This is Jeannie Mueller calling in.
Well, it's good. Thanks for calling. Hopefully, Carlos can hear you. I'm trying to balance.
I can hear her.
Okay,
I can hear her.
So Jeannie, thank you for calling in. So this is going to be the inaugural segment for our In Memoriam segment, which if you become a Patreon supporter, that's one of the benefits at a particular level, right? That you can send in your character sheet of a character who has died. Tell us a little bit about their backstory and how they died, and we'll pay our respects to them, and we'll put them in the GROGTALK graveyard here at GROGTALK headquarters. Oh, and I forgot to mention that we're broadcasting from the Ford Inn at the City League in Palinor.
Oh, that's right. We keep forgetting to support our benefactors who allowed us to go to those places. So, and we'll send you the link on our GrogCon site, our new In Memoriam page, where those who are inclined can send their characters and give a background. So, Jeannie, last week we had talked to Vic, and he was very gleeful in the amount of murdering he's done, particularly of your characters. So perhaps you can set the record straight and also talk about your character.
All right. Well, yes, he is quite a gleeful and lethal game master when it comes to killing characters. So, as you learned on GrogTalk last week, and since at this point, I can't tell you how many of my characters I've killed in the how many years I've been playing.
Well, that's
First
interesting.
edition with him.
Jeannie, I think you need. I'm sorry, Jeannie. You need an intervention. What you said was how many characters you've killed. That sounds like Vic. Vic's the one who told us. Oh, it's not. So if you need some help or deprogramming, you can call us anytime. You shouldn't allow his language in there. He killed your characters. You're a player now. Don't let that happen. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted. That was a very interesting comment. Go ahead.
That's okay. Well, I think you sent you 3 characters last week that he killed in the past probably 3 months or less that we've been playing with a group for about a year, and the one character was a sort of an Amazonian-sized female who was a wood elf and a ranger. She managed to make it to 5th level, and her name was Soleil Silverleaf, and she was friends with my one character who's managed to stay alive so far, who's a druid. And then the other character was a magic user, and nobody in the group knew that she was also an assassin, but a lawful assassin.
Okay.
And anyway, her name is Lyrafana Moonshadow, and she was sent by my one character who's alive, by the character's mother, to protect her because she had been childhood friends with my character who was still alive, and she managed to travel hundreds of miles to our little hovel we're trying to develop in some mountains, but we keep getting attacked by all manner of monsters, particularly like stone giants and cloud giants. And unfortunately, she met her demise by stone giants or not stone giants, hill giants and cloud giants and ogres.
Hill giants. Well, that was our character. That was our monster of the week. So it was apropos. We did not plan this. The dice have worked in our favor once again. This was the one that killed you. So Dan's got some questions about your character.
Yes, the name Lyra.
Okay.
And can you pronounce the name again, Jeannie, of the character?
Lyrafana Moonshadow.
Lyrafana. What would you like our listeners to remember about Lyrafana?
Yes.
Well, to remember about her?
Yeah.
Let's see. She
This is very hard for her.
She apparently not a very well-developed backstory.
Or maybe it's bringing up a lot of emotions.
She's emotional.
This may be a little more dramatic than we were hoping.
We hadn't expected this.
No, this is going dark already.
Do you need a moment?
Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
dramatic.
So if you're I see on your character sheet you wrote thief. Now, did you write that on there to trick other players into believing you were a thief when you're really an assassin?
Yes. He said don't. Yeah, he said say that you're a magic user thief. You don't want anybody to know, that you're an assassin, which is true. And I don't know why I filled that in. That was my goof up because I just had magic user on there. But she she was pretty skilled at her special skill was sneaking into people's bedrooms at night and poisoning them or slitting their throats. And she was supposed to.
I have a question for Jeannie.
Okay.
My character, who actually is a druid, but also when I rolled it, we have to roll our social class and everything, and I rolled that she was a princess of Puriendi. So her parents, her mother sent Lyrafana to protect her because their daughter was supposed to marry a son of a Shieldland character, and he did everything against what a druid's principles would be. He enjoyed killing animals, and just his character was she just didn't like him, so she sort of ran away from the palace to get away from him. And then he sent bandits after her, and all this stuff happened. This has been ongoing. So then my character's mother found out that the woman he was marrying was sending assassins after my character again. So that's why they sent Larafana she sent her to protect my character.
Gotcha. Hey, go ahead.
And no, I was just gonna say, but before my character was also traveling to Mankisburg, which is our town, our little village we've been trying to build up, and she didn't get there in time. Larafana the town was attacked by all the giants and the ogres, and Larafana was killed before my character got there.
Okay. So Carlos has a question. Carlos, she can't hear you, so I'll have to relay it to you.
Okay, I'm interested to know our dear departed Larasona, what gods did she worship, so that we can have a proper send off.
Yeah.
For her.
Did she have a patron deity? Liasana have a patron deity, Jeannie?
Yes, it would have been.
Yeah, I can't read it on your character.
I don't have it. I probably have it written down. I have a little notebook, and I probably wrote it down in there, and I don't have it with me.
Well, that's okay.
I apologize.
So what you can do?
Well, that's okay.
Carol says okay. What you can do is you can email that to info@GROGTALK, and then we'll let Carlos know, and we'll come up with something to add to your in memoriam, the ritual that was done after the falling of the giants.
But
That's not a problem.
But while we're waiting to find out what the deity was to do the proper ceremony, what are we going to do with the body?
Well,
should we just store it somewhere in
the bag of hold or the portable hole? I assume they
just
have.
throw the body in there.
I understand there's a room that's awful cold over there by the forest mountains.
I believe I was consumed by something, probably eaten by a giant.
It may not be a body.
Yeah. So is resurrection possible? Or just reincarnation at this point?
That depends how long. Is that right?
Well, raised dead is days. It's probably way past that, but reincarnation potentially. So we may do a reincarnation roll at some point.
Well, maybe this is a good thing that we don't have a body then.
But she was a druid.
Yeah, that's true, Carlos. So go ahead.
I have a question about. You said you were a lawful neutral assassin.
Were you lawful?
Yes.
So does that mean you just did state-sponsored killings?
Yeah.
Does that mean I get to what? Pardon me.
No, did you just do state-sponsored killings? Dan is trying to be he's trying to see you like a CIA assassin versus a straight-up money-for-hire killer.
Right, because you're lawful.
That's right.
That's lawful. I was working mainly for the Duchess, but I was working for the Duke and Duchess. So,
okay. So
that's right.
And I had unfinished business in the theocracy of Pale because.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes, in another game we were playing the theocrat. What he would do is he would arrest strangers who weren't recognized by the guard, and then he'd just throw them in jail, and then he'd make them go search for his gold scepter that he claimed was stolen in the swamp, and then of course you get attacked by trolls. So,
the Pale was a long way from
Curiosity. Yeah, that's
thrown in jail.
That's a different part of the world. Well, Jeannie, thank you for spending some time here. You're more than happy to stay on. We're gonna finish up a couple of things with Carlos, but thank you for being our inaugural mourner on our in memoriam section. And I'm sorry that the body was consumed, but if there is any remnants, talk to Vic and find out who your patron deity is, and we would put that. We'll send you the link of where it is.
Okay.
So hey, say hello to Vic and tell him that this programming of that it's your fault that your characters die. That's not going to work anymore. We can do an intervention if you'd like.
Okay. Absolutely, I will.
All right. See you later, guys.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So here's what I suggest. Being that my most powerful character that I've ever had, his patron deity was Istis, the goddess of
Sure,
fate.
yeah.
She's very non-denominational, and I would suggest that we say a quick prayer to Jeannie's character, to the goddess of fate and destiny,
Okay.
Istis.
So great Istis, take Liasana to her rightful place. I guess that would be up in where the Modrons are. What's that? Nirvana? Is it lawful neutral? Which is?
Yep, Nirvana.
Yeah. So bring her soul, or excuse me, her spirit. She's an elf. Bring her spirit to Nirvana, where it can be reformed, and her past life can be brought to reconciliation for the terrible atrocity that happened. In Istis' name, we say thank you.
Thank you.
That was pretty good.
Oh, she's an elf? She's coming back. Or something.
No, she was a human. I'm sorry. I thought she was an elf.
She's not coming back.
So go. I thought she must be like dual class then or something. So
what's going on
Istis
in that game?
Istis can figure it out.
that's right. Yeah, Istis is smart enough. We should roll that. So
She's a greater goddess. She's got it covered.
So just before Dan does it, we have the western side of the map of the world of Greyhawk for you.
Hey.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm gonna wait. If you worship a deity that is not your alignment, where do you go? Do you not go to the plane where that deity is? Are you like, hey, where is my deity?
Well, I think Carlos was saying that because she was non-denominational, that she kind of felt that this Istis would be a guide and channel her as thing of fate to the proper place.
I just meant general. So let's say I worship a chaotic neutral deity.
Okay.
But I'm actually, I don't know, true neutral. Where do I go?
You'd end up going to the chaotic neutral deity's plane, home plane.
Oh, okay.
So
which is why if you ever look at like the manual of the planes and stuff like that, the monster tables for each one of them, their alignments aren't necessarily for that plane. They don't line up exactly.
So you go to the plane of your patron deity.
Correct.
Got it. So I could be surrounded by some people who are a little different in alignment than I am. So it's not all.
Of course.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. So yes, I'm going to randomly select a place. Well, I'm in the water, but the clue. I've landed in the water. Well.
Are you in the Solnor Ocean?
I am in the Ardai Sea, very close to, what is that? Very close to Dolstrand.
That's right, by the Lordship of the Isles.
Well, since you actually touched on the water,
yes, just off the coast.
I'm actually going to talk about the Solnor Ocean for a moment, if you don't mind.
Sure, that's a little north of there, absolutely.
The Solnor Ocean is the largest ocean on the world of Earth. It is actually an ocean that is bounded, if you want to look at it this way, it's bounded loosely on three sides. One of them is by the Flanaess, which is the continent of Eric, which is what you just saw on the map over there. That'll be on its west side. On the north, you'll see it bounded by the small island of Fireland, the subcontinent of Fireland, which is off the map.
Yeah.
And to the extreme west, which is even further off the map, is Frank Metzer's home setting, which is called Aquaria, otherwise known as Aqua Aquaria, otherwise known as New Imperia. The Solnor is similar in character to the Pacific Ocean in that it's great in size and in depth, and it is a relatively amenable ocean in comparison to, say, the icy sea to the north.
Interesting. And so you've carried on Greyhawk. I mean, your knowledge is encyclopedic. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And so you're part of the community. And actually, it looks like Vic is going to be. Apparently, he didn't like some of the things we said, and he's concerned about that we're basically brainwashing Jeannie. That he may be calling. He actually asked in chat. He wants a lawyer. He wants a rules lawyer, and I said, well, all we've got is Dan, and he didn't want a gnomish lawyer. So
we make the best lawyers.
Apparently,
we're lawful. So gnomes are lawful.
He may be calling in to defend himself, but
did you just say that gnomes are lawful?
Aren't they lawful? Yes. Aren't they lawful? I think.
Gnomes.
Why is he looking?
Check your monster manual.
Really? They're chaotic?
They're not. Yeah.
All right, hang on.
Dwarves are lawful.
Oh, okay.
Halflings are lawful.
Halflings aren't lawful either.
Well, okay, wait a second. Neutral to lawful good.
Right.
Neutral to lawful. Okay, so neutral to lawful good. So they're not as lawful as dwarves.
And I would go so far as to say that the median alignment of the gnome is chaotic.
Is there halflings are lawful good?
It says in the Monster Manual they're lawful good.
Dwarves are lawful
What?
good.
What, the halflings are lawful good in the Monster
Yeah.
Manual? Yeah, that's true.
Elves. So elves are the only ones that are. So it would be elves are the most chaotic, obviously, right? Then
I would say
Then
so.
we'd have gnomes.
Yeah.
And then we'd have the halflings and the dwarves over here.
Yeah.
And I would think most half-orcs would be lawful because of their orc.
Yes, because
lineage.
they're tribal relationships. Yeah, I would say so too.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so we were talking about the world of Greyhawk. Yeah, through Castle Entertainment, one thing that I like to do is that in lieu of official Wizards of the Coast support for the world of Greyhawk, my modules, I'm trying to expand on them, and I'm trying to develop certain areas in the way that I would like to see them done. And in fact, I'm working on a magnum opus right now. I have a cover done by Jeff Easley, a map done by Robert Lazzaretti, and I'm about 1,000 pages into a personal project on one of the lands of Earth that I won't mention right now.
Nice.
Oh, apparently some.
But yeah, when I'm done with that, that'll be a free product for everyone.
Awesome.
The
So
grog line is apparently heating up
blowing
today.
up. The GROGTALK line is heating up. Who's on the phone now?
It's Vic Dorset.
Oh, Vic's on the phone.
I'm sorry, who is that?
It's Vic somebody.
Vic?
Somebody? Dorso?
Somebody named Vic is on the line.
Some guy named Vic's on the line.
Carlos is right there. That's the guy you want. He's right there.
Well,
I think that's a doppelganger. Somebody call him Mandaroo. He doesn't have his sunglasses on like normal, looking at somebody like he's just got out of the round of a World Series of poker or something.
Is that true, Carlos? Do you use sunglasses to avoid players seeing your eye movements during the games?
No, I'm nocturnal. I've worked night shift for the last 16 years, so I'm very light sensitive. Plus, I've had a lot of hockey related concussions, so I'm pretty light.
I gotcha.
Okay, because as players, we're always nervous. We figured out you're trying to play, the poker face, and
no, not at all. No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm super light sensitive, is all.
So Vic, Carlos can hear you. You won't be able to. Yeah, you won't be able to hear him. Next time we're gonna, if you want to come on, we'll do a double Skype thing so you can all hear each other. But do you have a question or a statement that you want to make? We were very concerned about some of the genie's comments that that she's basically just a willing accomplice to her own demise.
Yeah, right. It's her fault.
Right, it's her fault. Blame the victim.
Right.
It is. In my style of gameplay, she rules her fate. Remember that. I mean, any rules lawyer, Dan,
I'm not a rules lawyer.
would agree to this, right? If you go into the game and you tell them that they have to roll their own fate and they die, well then it's not my fault anymore, is it?
It's not his fault. This is the system.
But who set up the encounter that required the die roll?
What did you say, Dan?
So Dan is not supporting you on this. I feel like maybe just because we just recently were killed horribly, but in a very entertaining way. We're not as sympathetic to the DM plight of providing a fair environment, but yet ultimately the players have to have agency. But he basically said it's your fault. I'm just paraphrasing.
And this is why I make Dan is a horrible courtroom lawyer.
That's right. Well, he's the only lawyer we have, so this is what we get. So how are you, Vic?
Just fine.
Good. So, hey, do you have a question for Carlos while he's on? Because we're about.
I'm still wondering where the sunglasses are, man.
He still wants the sunglasses. I think he's just trying to. I think Carlos is didn't want to throw people off on the podcast here. So, but he has offered, just like you have, to run a game online and use one of his adventure cards. So I'm sure if he was in full game mode, he would bust out the sunglasses, so we get the full effect from that, which would be cool. But you doing well?
Yep. I'm working on another dungeon already.
Okay.
With some inspiration from you folks.
Awesome.
And,
Well,
And
I heard you're coming down in October, which would be awesome-tastic. We can't wait to see you.
yeah, well, is Carlos going to come down now?
Well, I hope he can. He certainly has an invitation. We would love to have him, and we would do what we can to make that happen. But I know he has Game Hall and a couple other things. So if you have an open invitation, we can reserve his. You can just come to play. You can come to DM, whatever you'd like. We can arrange that.
Though actually anybody has an open invitation.
That's
it's a
true.
Convention, right?
Well, it is. Well, but to run a game, we're not just going to let any jabroni in here.
That's true.
There could be a master's level. Indescribable Death series.
Oh, we could have an incomprehensible. You talked about you could run little 10-minute so everyone could get a taste of it.
Incomprehensible Death.
I've promised my wife this year or next year that we're going to Harry Potter World, so I may show up there.
Oh, wonderful.
If you come down to Harry Potter, please let us know because we have the Central Florida.
If Carlos comes down, we can make 20 each, and then as the person walks up, they can roll a 20-sided die, and we can look at our sheets and go, "Okay, it's your turn, Carlos."
Right.
"No, it's your
Just
turn,
take
Nick."
turns. Take turns slaughtering the people. There'd be a line out the door. We have T-shirts. I got killed by different ones. Like red team, blue team. I got killed by Vic. I got killed by Carlos.
Carlos or Vic. We
Right.
just do a single T-shirt.
Yeah,
I get killed by Carlos or Vic.
That's right. Well, there'd be a special T-shirt.
Or both underneath.
Or you get a card. You fill out. You go to those events where you go to each booth. And you get stamped. If you get all the stamps, I was killed by all the DMs. You get a prize.
Oh yeah, there you go. We can just use a stamp. I saw some guys at Game Old Con. They had a stamp and they just stamped the character sheets that said "dead by."
Dead by. That'd be perfect. That'd be slaughtered by. Well, we're gonna wrap this up, Vic. I look forward to talking to you again. Come on the time on GROGTALK anytime, and if you're gonna do it, we'll get your Skype set up so you can jibber jabber with us next time. So.
All right. Well, I got it downstairs ready to go. So you just tell me when you want me, and I'll make sure. And in the meantime, I've got 3 little boys here. I'm gonna go make their incomprehensible death. So have a good day, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Vic.
Talk to you
Great to
later.
hear your voice,
Carlos
Vic.
says take care.
Bye. See you, Carlos.
He says bye.
Now, Carlos, before we wrap up, can you tell our listeners and our viewers how they can find your adventures?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's 2 ways. There's 2 primary ways you can get in touch with me. Either you can go to Facebook.com/casl entertainment or Patreon.com/casl entertainment. We fulfill both of our orders online personally through that way.
Fantastic.
So
And it's
all you have to do is you have to look at our catalog in either place an order, and we'd be happy to get you stuff.
all right.
We'll set you up with some Castle Entertainment swag like these nifty T-shirts,
Very nice.
things like that.
So that's awesome. And it's CASL or KASL? Just want to make sure.
CASL. It's my 4 initials.
Just your initials. So Castle Entertainment, both on Facebook and Patreon. So you've listened to our show. We do the suggestion of the week. So Carlos, what is your suggestion of the week if you have one? Besides obviously going to Patreon, Castle Entertainment, or Facebook.
I have a great suggestion for the week for dungeon masters that are interested in making their maps really pop off make them real eye-catching. There's a site out there called pyromancers.com, which they have a tile-based dungeon mapping program called Dungeon Painter, and it is outstanding. And with that and a little bit of help from Photoshop and post-production, you can make some absolutely dynamite maps. If you feel like you want to be a little bit more involved in that, you can go to a site called incarnate.com, INKARNATE.com. They also do maps. Both programs are completely free, and both of them are outstanding. They get Castle Entertainment seal of approval.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you for that. And I hope they fail their save and use both of those items. So my suggestion actually was from my son, my oldest son, who listens to the show, who's been on the show when Dan wasn't here. He sent me a link to this really cool site. A lot of times you build NPCs and you did a nice job developing characters, but if you're not an artist, I have no artistic skill, giving faces to them or having some artwork is very hard. Well, there's a site called This Person Does Not Exist, and it basically generates random faces based on the internet pictures, and you can just click through them and it comes with these people don't exist, but they look like real people. And so you can spend hours doing it, but you can come up with realistic pictures of people who they're free and they're people who do it. So it's actually fascinating looking at the pictures. I'm showing Dan here with this. So if you don't have artistic skill and you want faces for your players, you can just come up and boom. So this person does not exist is my suggestion as you're building your world. You've got a map maker, and then pre-gen the characters. If they're done right, they really add a lot of flavor, and having a face to it can be good or bad depending on the style of play you have. So that's my suggestion.
Fantastic. Mine is going to be Osric, which I know that Carlos, I know that you make your adventures compatible to Osric.
I do.
Oh, and if you've got a copy of the book, that'd be great. I forgot to bring mine to show our viewers. For those of you who don't know, it's you can pronounce it Osric or Osric. Osric is what we call there it is. There, Carlos is holding up.
Okay, there you go.
The Osric book, which stands for Old School Reference and Index Compilation. And if you want to play 1E, but you don't want to spend the money buying the Player's Handbook, the Dungeons and Masters Guide off of eBay, if you're a little intimidated about learning all those rules, and you want something that's a little bit more refined and simplified, Osric replicates. Well, Carlos, why don't you go ahead and explain it? Because I know you use Osric for your modules, so maybe you can describe a little bit what Osric is.
Osric is a great clone of first edition. What it does is it neatly cleans up a lot of things in first edition, like encumbrance that were always bugaboos of the first edition rule set. It does it in a very nicely laid out manner. And best of all, not only can you get your first edition experience that way, you can get it for free. You can download Osric for free from their website, or you can buy it from my second suggestion, which is Blackblade Publishing.
Okay.
Blackblade Publishing. This is a book over here that is almost 400 pages over here, hardback, nicely done, and I got it for $20 from the guys from Blackblade. You're never going to beat that deal, and they're champions of the first edition experience. They're great guys. I highly recommend that you buy your wares from them.
Awesome.
And the nice thing about it is you can use Osric for your modules, and you're not violating any copyright, right? So that's it's all.
Which is huge when you're trying to do something like I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah, and particularly for people who maybe like us had spent decades out of the game, are thinking about getting back into it, they're a little bit leery about investing the money in the books. That Osric, that's what I did. Instead of buying the Player's Handbook and the DMG and all that, I bought Osric because it was cheap, but it encapsulated all the major rules that you would need. And so for anyone out there who's thinking about getting back into 1E, Osric, I think, is a great place to start and perhaps to stay and just stick with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it clarifies a lot of the rules. It's again a labor of love. People are they're doing it because they want the 1E, the old school flavor, and move it forward to a modern time. So I think I was very impressed when I saw your version of it. If I didn't still have my original books from back in the day, I would definitely pick up a copy of it. So. Carlos, thank you for your time. This has been awesome. I really had a great time. Hope you enjoyed it. Last word. Anything you want to say before we head on out?
And before he rolls his die 10.
That's right. Yeah, before you die 10.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I just want to let you guys all know out there that are watching this that First Edition is still alive and well out there in the hearts and the minds of the fandom. You see it at any convention you go to or in a lot of tables around the house, and there's still people out there supporting the world of Greyhawk in particular. So keep that in mind. If you're fans, there are places for you to go.
Well, that's what we're hoping. Vic has a theory that as everyone gets old, they're going to retire down here. So we are trying to become the Gary Conn South of this, that, when we're in our 70s and 80s, we're going to still keep playing, and this is where we'll end up.
We were thinking of opening up a retirement community for role players to retire to. So.
Well, now that I know that you guys are on the map, it's something that my wife and I can shoot for.
Absolutely. That would be awesome.
Maybe we can see you in 20 years.
Yeah, plus or minus. Yeah, so retirement is.
Oh, I meant to game down there for a show.
That'd be great.
I'd be happy to do that.
We
Absolutely,
would love it. Yeah, and if you can get down here, certainly we could find accommodations as well if that made it a little easier. So we,
Oh, it would make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's always the big expense. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and so if you are down
Dan's
here,
got plenty of room in his place. No, I'm just kidding. We both have room. We would take care
I
of that.
do. I'm a dime.
My wife being an Australian citizen, I've promised her for the last 15 years that we've been married to show her more of America more and more, and I've been negligent in that. So showing her Florida and the states in between would be great.
Well, let me mention this real quick too. So if you are down, you're going to go to Harry Potter World. We'd love to have you come game with us. We have something called the Central Florida AD&D Grognards Guild. We're on Meetup. James runs a group that actually has, 11 players?
11 to 13,
11
depending
to
on who shows
13
up.
players in his group. We have another group that James plays in,
Yep.
John runs, which has about,
6 or 7 right now,
players.
yep.
And I run one-offs about once a month where I get about 4 or 5 players. So if you are down in the neighborhood, like Vic Dorso was here. He was on the West Coast. He drove over and ran a game. So if you are in the neighborhood, please let us know in advance. If you're interested, you don't have to do it, but we'd love to have either you play or have you run something for a game. So,
Yeah, all kidding aside, like I said, if you want to come down here and the accommodation's the issue, we can take care of that if you get us down here.
Oh, that's outstanding. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your generosity. And thanks for giving me a chance to speak and to talk about casl Entertainment.
Yeah, awesome. So last thing is you got to roll the D10 and tell us
Yeah.
how well we did, or how well the game went.
I did 9.
Wow, I agree.
Wow.
Oh, and you know what I forgot? I'm so sorry. You know what I forgot we didn't talk about? We don't have time to do it is your love of animals. I foster kittens, and I know that one of your modules, right, Lost Dog, the proceeds go to a charity, right, that cares for dogs.
The charity. I did a charity initiative called a charity called Red Rover, and they one of their main missions is to reunite lost pets with their owners. And they were like instrumental, for example, in when California, when they had the wildfires and all the pets went missing and things like that, they helped reunite people. I thought it was a worthy cause, so I wrote a module called Lost Dog, in which it all revolves around a young beggar girl in the Free State of Greyhawk and her missing dog, Bucky.
Oh, that Red Rover sounds very similar to our book reunification project, where we seek to reunify. For example, we're looking for Kenny Cronell, right?
We are. No, we're not looking for Kenny. Kenny's my friend. This is my friend.
Kenny, if you're out there, we want to return
I know where
your
he
book
is. He's
to
in
you,
St.
so
Petersburg.
We're trying to,
He's my friend. I know where he is.
Tell Kenny, we're waiting for you.
No, we're not looking for him.
All right. So, all right. Well, it doesn't surprise me that Carlos rolled a 9.
That is great. Actually, our friend David's on. He's saying the Aussie connection runs deep here. So we've got Australians, we got everything going on. So that's awesome. Hey, so Carlos, thank you so much.
Thanks, Baron Lising.
Have a great. Appreciate all your time today, and we look forward to seeing you. So I'm James.
I'm Dan.
And we'll see you next week on GROGTALK.